Ah, didn't play my intro. I see how it is. Anyways.
Joining us tonight is Jake Rattlesnake.
I like to go by Lord Rattlesnake or Lord Jake, most base chat of all the lands.
You don't have an argument. Present your paper or shut up.
Everyone's view is definitely inherently biased. So this is when debate becomes very interesting. I can hear what you're saying, and I can see that you're dressed as a cat.
I'm a dog.
You said you like to go play fetch.
I wolf, yes.
So how does that tie into your relationship? Like, what are you looking for if you're a dog?
Yeah, I think that John Jr. will be president one day. If I was a gambling man, I'd put money on that.
Founder of Rattlesnake TV, Jake.
Man, I really appreciate it, dude.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Rattlesnake TV debate night. We have got a great one for you today. We have Patrick Walsh versus JimBob. Patrick is going to be taking the affirmative side on is Mormonism true. JimBob is going to be taking the negative, saying that Mormonism is false. So, with that, let's kick it over to Bruce Buffer.
And now, for the thousands in attendance, let's get ready to rumble!
And copyright strike.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I appreciate you intro. No, he's my boy. He loves it. First of all, Patrick, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Yeah, Patrick Walsh. I'm not exactly a content creator, but I guess follow me on Twitter or X at PetrickStar. You probably, Jim reposted my little announcement, so you can find me there, I guess, if you want to find me. But so it is, honored to do this. I'm really excited to do it. I'm originally, from San Antonio, born and raised. 30 years with the exception of my mission. The mission was kind of the pivotal point in my life where I really, really dived into the beliefs that we had, because leading up to it, I was kind of just coasting or whatever. And since then, I've taken a calling of like early morning seminary teacher and just really loved diving into our scriptures and everything. And I do like just good-hearted debates, like on my campus and such. I just do it kind of on the fly, and I just found them fun. So, and I guess, yeah, that's about it, I suppose.
Amazing. All right, JimBob.
Made by JimBob, commentator, political cartoonist. I start crap online. So most of the time I finish the crap too. I'm glad to debate. Thanks, Patrick, for showing up. And Lord Jake, on such short notice, I really appreciate you stepping in and moderating. It's hard to find good moderators. So I'm excited to debate tonight.
All right, fellas. Well, you guys know the rules. There's not going to be... we can have a little bit of leeway in terms of interruptions and all those sorts of things, but if one person is domineering too much and if one person is doing any sort of unnecessary personal attacks, we'll bring it back to the subject. We're going to try and stay on the subject as well, so we don't want to get too far away. We don't want to derail the conversation too much, but you guys both know how to debate, so it should be just fine. So did any of you particularly want to go first? I didn't actually...
He's affirming, so he should go first.
Patrick, sure. You go for it.
Thank you. Again, just I gotta say thank you, Jim. Just for setting this up. So it's kind of a unique experience for me. So I'm really grateful for that. So is Mormonism true? And I'm just gonna clarify that Mormonism, as presented by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, specifically. And I also have to clarify what exactly do I mean by true? Because that's kind of a loaded, word. I believe you can find bits of truth all over the place, even in other faiths. But the truth I'm debating, the truth I'm presenting, is specifically truth unto what we call exaltation, right? Which means in our kind of language, not only salvation, but being able to live with God, our Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, and our families for eternity and receiving all that God has, right? Or become joint heirs with Christ, as Paul puts it. So what's kind of like some of the supporting evidence of the truthfulness of these claims of Joseph Smith and the current, the prophet? I found that the piece of evidence I found the strongest by far is just the very existence of the Book of Mormon, and I'll explain why. Why is the Book of Mormon evidence of the truthfulness of what we call the restored gospel of Jesus Christ? Well, for several reasons, and I think first, if we consider just the circumstances, the really impossible circumstances Joseph Smith was under in the year 1829, actually is when he was translating it, put aside his formal education or anything like that, which he had none. It's been on record, both his scribe Oliver Cowdery, his own wife Emma Smith, that without a manuscript by his side, without a draft or source material, he dictated the entirety of the Book of Mormon to his scribe in around a little over 65 working days, right? So the church historians, when they look at the time that he started and stopped and all the times that they took breaks, they estimated anywhere from 65 to the most at 75 days to do so. So that's the entirety of the Book of Mormon, which is a historic religious text of over 531 pages, over 300,000 words in length. Cowdery is on record for saying that whenever they would return to the translation process after a break, that Joseph would not even so much as ask him, okay, where did we last leave off? What was the last thing we wrote? He wouldn't even ask to look at the manuscript that he was writing. Now that kind of struck me a lot. Now, I guess apologists and such, they'll kind of gloss over that point. But to me, it struck me a lot just because, ever since middle school, I like to write a lot. So I like creative writing. But if anyone listening might be able to relate to this, who use like academic writing or whatever, what have you, I've written short stories. I'm talking short, like 3 to 5 pages, maybe 7 pages later on. I cannot imagine the process of writing the story, but simply with no draft. Again, even if it's my story coming from my head, dictating the entire thing to a scribe, not even so much as asking, okay, what was last said? Where did we leave off? And expecting that to result in some sort of cohesive, consistent whole on a short story, let alone a literary work the scale of the Book of Mormon. But I think perhaps more important than just the miraculous and circumstances that I find of the actual production and translation of the first edition of the Book of Mormon is the eternal truths contained therein. So the Book of Mormon, the Book of Mormon teaches and testifies of Jesus Christ, his divinity, his atonement, more clearly, more plainly, and more spiritually powerfully than any other book, than any other source. Or as the late Russell M. Nelson put it, the Book of Mormon provides the fullest and most authoritative understanding of the atonement of Jesus Christ to be found anywhere. It teaches his very nature and the actual purpose of what his atonement is and how it applies to us, to the point of really no confusion. It also expands our knowledge of many biblical truths, principles found in the Bible that, just for the sake of time, I won't list them all off right now, but I'll be happy to get into those, throughout the debate. So really, it begs the question, how did he do this? How did he and his circumstances, again, the historical, factual evidence that we have of how long it took him to produce it, and keeping a consistent narrative the entire time, how did he do that and produce the most coherent and the fullest understanding of Christ's doctrine and his atonement to be found ever since then, if not by divine guidance, if not by divine power? I really hope at some point throughout this debate that Jim can give an alternative, reasonable explanation as to how he believes that happened, how we got the Book of Mormon, how he produced it, given the knowledge that we do have of those restraints. Additionally, on top of the Book of Mormon itself, the tangible evidence, as we call it, we have the primary source eyewitness accounts of 11 different people, aside from Joseph Smith, of eyewitness testimonies of the actual golden plates that he used for the translation. Three of those total 11, claiming and witnessing and testifying that they saw the angel Moroni. Not only had not one of these 11 ever retracted their testimonies of this witness, but quite the opposite, actually. They restated it all of them restated it several times throughout, or most of them, right? But none of them retracted it. Not a single one retracted. All of them restated their testimonies of this witness throughout their lives. David Whitmer doing so on his deathbed. So I'm just gonna guess now. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm gonna guess that Jim and I probably agree that any one of these people, especially considering how more than half of them later on ended up either distancing themselves from the church and Joseph Smith, some of them being excommunicated because of disagreements, any single one of them could have single-handedly destroyed, ruined Joseph Smith's credibility, and reputation forever. Any one of them, a single one of them, by simply coming forth and saying, yeah, all that stuff we said about, seeing the plates, yeah, it was a lie. We made it all up. So I'm just wondering why they would not do this, especially since they had even more incentive to do so, because a couple of them ended up loathing him later in their lives. Why would they not just come out and say, yeah, he was a fraud the whole time? Now, there's a lot more we can discuss, and as far as the truth and the desired kind of knowledge that I found of the knowledge of the topic of eternal families that we teach, a marriage format that's not found anywhere else on the planet currently in that format of marrying beyond this life. But we can go ahead and get into that afterwards. So I'll go ahead and just yield my time. So thank you.
All right, cool. JimBob?
All right. Thanks for taking the debate. So is Mormonism true? In his opener, I didn't get much argumentation of how it is the case that it's true, more so that he's reasserting that he believes it's true. Well, we do know already that you believe it's true. It seems like the only argument he is kind of posited, it has nothing to do with the coherence of the metaphysics of the theology itself, but rather that he thinks from personal incredulity, it's impossible for a con man to write that much in such a short time. Well, let's say for a second it is actually impossible to write that much in a short amount of time, which I don't believe it is. In fact, I would argue the more bullshit it actually is, the easier it is to get on the page, which I think is consistent with the Book of Mormon. Now, let's pretend for a second there was some other explanation. Well, I mean, we both believe in the supernatural. It could very well be the case that Joseph Smith had some sort of aid from demonic entities. That's not inconsistent. In fact, that could be entirely possible. If someone can be influenced by God, they can certainly be influenced by demons. And to the extent of suspending the regularity of nature, or what we should expect of nature, is something that's all throughout theology, not just Christianity. Now, the question is whether it's true. So I would argue that if Mormonism is true, then Mormonism is logically coherent. Mormonism is not logically coherent, therefore Mormonism isn't true. It's fairly simple. Let's go through some logically incoherent aspects of Mormonism. My opponent believes that a false church compiled and kept the Bible. And by false church, I mean Mormonism holds that any false church is the mother of abomination and the whore of the earth. This is in Nephi. They also believe that the scriptures are somehow reliable, even though they came from the whore of the earth. That's already inconsistent. They have the same problem that Islam has, which comes down to a dilemma. If the scriptures are corrupt and kept by Satan, but you know your Mormon faith by the scriptures, how do you determine which are reliable and which are not? Well, the answer is Joseph Smith said so. And you'll see in every Mormon debate, ultimately, the answer to every epistemic question is Joseph Smith said so. So how do you know he's a prophet? Because he said so. How do you know books were missing or messed with in the Bible? Well, Joseph Smith said so. Is there any other evidence supporting these claims? No, it's Joseph Smith saying so. Now, if I press my opponent on why does he believe Joseph Smith is a true prophet, it won't be any standard that he holds to that he's a true prophet. Also something missing from Mormonism. Ultimately, they're going to say, well, I feel it really strongly in my chest. What I like to call demonic heartburn. The Mormon holds that scripture is reliable, yet Joseph Smith clearly didn't believe the scripture was reliable because he added to it. Because he claimed a false church removed many verses. When I asked, how do you know the scriptures were removed? The Mormon replies, because Joseph Smith said so. And there is no other historical reference to justify this claim. There is no evidence of that claim. In fact, all the evidence points the other way around. Based on Mormon doctrine, the church fell into apostasy when the apostles died, which would be around 100 AD. After which time the Bible was misinterpreted, and specifically verses were allegedly removed from various books, including Genesis. Unfortunately, Joseph Smith didn't use his prophetic power to foresee the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls later on in the 40s, which preserved unaltered manuscripts of Genesis that dated back to as early as 300 BC and as late as 70 AD. Now, keep in mind, the apostles would have died out around 100 AD. The Genesis texts also match current Jewish texts. Why is this a problem? Did the whore of Babylon, did the whore of the earth, abominable church, also somehow corrupt the Jewish manuscripts? The Jews who actually reject the theology of the false church? Keep in mind, the oral Torah was maintained for nearly 1,500 years from the time of Moses until the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. So tell me, how did a post-apostolic church corrupt the oral traditions and manuscripts of those who rejected Christ as God? Did they sneak into the synagogues and somehow hypnotize the Jews to teach false oral teachings that are inconsistent with their views? I don't know what kind of story you're going to have to believe to say this is the case. Not only that, if we I don't have it on me, sorry. Metaphysics. Let's get into the metaphysics. Mormons believe divinity is humanity realized. They believe God the Father was once a man and through a process achieved divinity. This necessitates that God the Father has a father, which introduces an endless regress of father gods. Mormons also believe that matter itself shares eternally uncreated status with God, and that God did not create the world, but rather arranged existing matter. Well, matter is a part of the temporal space-time continuum, which means God, sharing eternal uncreated status with matter, according to Mormonism, is actually confined to temporality. That is to say, God, in his eternal uncreated status, is inside the confines of space, time, and matter. This is incoherent. Not only that, but God merely arranged existing matter to form some ordered matter. That means before he arranged matter into order, he coexisted with disordered matter. Well, I'm not sure of his view exactly, but God is usually seen as the standard, the ultimacy of order. From the Mormon view, God, the ultimacy of order, existed co-eternally, shared eternal status, divine status, with his absence, disorder. Under the Mormon metaphysics, God eternally coexisted with his own privation. This is incoherent. Mormon ecclesiology is also completely incoherent. Mormons must believe that a church that resembles Mormonism today must have necessarily existed in documentation and practice before the alleged apostasy in the year about 100. There's no evidence of any such church. Mormons have to have no historic line of succession of their alleged original true church. Everything comes back to Joseph Smith and Joseph Smith alone. Mormons might as well develop a new sola. Maybe they can call it Sola Smithola, it has kind of a ring to it. Mormons also don't have a coherent standard for what constitutes a true prophet. Now, the entirety of the theology is based on the claim that Joseph Smith is a true prophet. Now, it's a little incoherent if the theology that states Joseph Smith is a true prophet and relies wholly on that claim being true. It's kind of bizarre that they don't actually have a coherent true standard of what a true prophet or a false prophet is, right? So how do you know Smith was a true prophet? They ultimately say, I feel it to be true, or he said so. It's a lot like the trans people when they assign their genders, right? You go, how do you know that? They go, internally, I know that. There's no other reason to believe it, though. There are so many problems with Mormonism, from their metaphysics to Joseph Smith's failed prophecies, or the fact that they believe matter shares eternally uncreated status with God, or the endless regress of heavenly fathers and celestial God districts, or black people being the curse of Cain, or wearing magical Mormon underwear. But I think we have enough on the table to dissect to determine Mormonism is firstly incoherent, and because it's incoherent, it can't be true. That isn't to say coherent views are ultimately true because they're coherent, but if they're true, they must be coherent. As far as the Book of Abraham, this gets into a whole other problem. Joseph Smith finding Egyptian papyri, writing what he thinks it means, and ultimately, through a matter of sketchy little exchanges with different people, we find out that later, well, no, those were always and still are Egyptian burial texts that have nothing to do with Christianity, nothing to do with the Abrahamic religion. Joseph Smith is a con man. He started as a con man. He wanted to find treasures. Everything he's done since his early life is consistent with his early life. Basically, he was a conjurer and a con man. And so there's no reason other than he thinks it's true. There's no reason for you or anyone in the audience to believe for a second Joseph Smith somehow discerned a true religion. So I'll concede the rest of my time.
Alrighty. Good opening statements, fellas. Just wanted to let everybody know that if you send myself or JimBob a super chat, because I can see JimBob's ones here as well, we will read out your questions at the end. We're going to get into about 40 minutes of open dialogue, but I'm happy to go, honestly, as long as you fellas want to go with that, and then we'll get into super chats after. Shout outs to TD for gifting 10 Rattlesnake TV memberships, and Blaine Pasashik for saying, smash that like button, hit that goal for 50. Thank you very much, Blaine. Beyond Seraphim gifted 5 JimBob memberships as well. So, guys, yes, after the opening open dialogue, we can get into some more super chats. Depending on how many we get, we might read up 5 or 10 up or something like that. But with that,
so was there supposed to be a cross-examination? I don't know, like turns, or are we not doing that? That's fine if it's just full. Open
well, a
dialogue.
cross-examination is essentially your affirmative. So it's me cross-examining you. I'm not sure what you would cross-examine from. You could certainly ask me questions, but you're taking the affirmative, so you're defending the affirmative.
Okay. That's fair. That's fine.
You guys just want to do open dialogue then?
That's fine. I mean,
yeah,
I'll follow your lead. So,
all right, sounds good to me. Let's get into it.
I'm guessing that means you want to lead with the questions, or can I ask?
So JimBob's just had a light malfunction.
Sorry, yeah, my son is in here.
He's scared of the dark as well. So, are you okay?
Yeah, my son is he snuck into the office and he's messing with things.
Okay. All right, get into it, fellas. Let's go.
James, stop. Go. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to start with the most rudimentary question here. The entirety of Mormonism relies on the assumption that Joseph Smith is a true prophet, right? So what I'm going to ask you is, what's your methodology for determining whether or not someone is a true or false prophet?
Well, the reason I brought up so strongly the Book of Mormon is because we see that as one of his quote unquote fruits. That we're basing it
getting
off.
trolled by my son. Hold on a second.
We're basing it off.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna have to, 1 second, because this is just going to be a problem if I don't.
All right, mute yourself, JimBob, and just we'll get a sort.
All good.
You know what? He says that he's getting trolled by his son Patrick, but I actually believe that JimBob's just scared of the dark, and that's why he's having to fix this. I think he sleeps with the lights on.
Sometimes I'm scared of the dark too. It's all good.
No, it does happen. All right, so I guess maybe we should talk about Mormonism or something.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what music he plays. He has all the guitars. Like what style he's? Do you know?
Troll music, I think we would call it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like trolling the libs.
Okay.
That sort of music. Yeah. No, the best kind.
Just tell me when you're.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So the question is, Mormon theology relies wholly on the assumption that Joseph Smith is a true prophet. My question is, what standard do you use to determine someone's a true prophet from a false prophet?
Yeah, that's fair. So you often hear us saying like quoting Jesus with by the fruits you shall know them, and sometimes we equate that to being like, oh, anything that produces something good is necessarily good. That's not necessarily what that means, but he does put that as a standard for prophets specifically. And I know you had the argument of the apostasy horror of all the years. I'm happy to push back and challenge you on that, but that's essentially the reason I started off so strongly with the Book of Mormon is because we see that as the clearest evidence, or his fruits, if you will. And I really love how, because this has happened a lot when I've argued and asked, how do you think it came to be? How do you think the Book of Mormon came to be? And a lot of them had to concede, kind of like what you brought up is like, well, maybe it was supernatural. And I know you probably think, well, it didn't come from the side I'm thinking it came from. Maybe it came from the devil or something like that. But it's surprisingly more times than you might think, it comes down to that, conceding that this was probably the best explanation, was a superhuman task, which I agree with you on that one. If that wasn't your strongest explanation or reason, then I'm just wondering why you let off with that one. I would want to know what other explanations you would have. But yeah, it's by their fruits essentially. And the Book of Mormon, I've not seen a convincing argument as to how he actually produced it, and that is a fruit. I see that as like a superhuman task, if you will, or a miracle.
Okay. That doesn't really tell me the methodology. You're just saying know them by their fruits. People who aren't prophets can have good fruits, right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so
not if they claim falsely. However, I got to make that distinction. If you carry the name of God falsely, no, I don't believe they could produce good fruits. At least long-lasting fruits, I should say. Maybe temporarily.
people who are not prophets carry authentic good fruits?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so that's not a methodology for determining a true prophet, because you've just conceded that regular people who aren't true prophets also can be known by their fruits. So that doesn't tell me between
there's
someone
an important distinction though. For
yeah, that's what I'm
okay.
asking for.
Yeah.
If I live a life and I claim I'm a true prophet and I have good fruits, how are you going to tell someone that they're not a true prophet if your fruits can't be the thing that you're pointing to?
I would argue that if they claimed to be speaking for God and God revealed themselves, and however method they're using, then no, I don't believe they could produce good fruits. No. But if someone who's not carrying the name of God falsely, like, which I know what you're claiming Joseph Smith is, you're claiming he lied about it and it was a fraud. If he did so by Jesus's logic, he could not that he shouldn't, or he could not produce a good fruit. That's the method.
Okay.
That's
But the thing is, now the question is, how do you determine? It's still the same question, because you're saying a true prophet will have good fruits, and as long as they say it in the name of God, they have good fruits. Well, again, a normal person who's not a prophet could also say in the name of God everything they do and produce good fruits. Still, is there any standard that you're going to use to determine whether or not someone's a true prophet versus a false prophet, if it's the case that people who aren't prophets could share the same exact status as a true prophet? You're not telling me the methodology, so let's do it. Make it more simple. Someone comes forward, they claim in the name of God to be a true prophet. Someone else comes forward in the name of God claiming to be a true prophet. What is the methodology you're going to use between the two to determine whether either of them are true prophets, both of them are true prophets, or neither of them are true prophets? How are you going to do it? Walk me through it, though. Yeah. Walk me through the methodology.
That's fine. Just to clarify, when you say prophet, and you might think this is just splitting hairs, but there is an important distinction. When you say prophet, in the same sense Joseph Smith is saying that he was a prophet, because depending on the sense of the word, you could technically be a prophet. I could be a prophet, right? According to the John's explanation that the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus, right? So I'm just trying to clarify, you're talking about a prophet in the same sense that Joseph Smith claimed to receive visions, claimed to be restoring, claims like that, or what do you mean exactly?
Well, it's your view. It's whatever you mean by it, because clearly, in my point of view, there actually is a standard for a prophet, in which case I would probably appeal to Deuteronomy and the history of the church. We would hold that a prophet, if he speaks and he says he's speaking from God himself, and he speaks false things that they don't come to pass, he's a false prophet. Now, every Mormon I've debated, and maybe you'll clarify this for me. Is it true that from a Mormon perspective, you could be a true prophet and get a bunch of prophecies incorrect?
No, not in the sense of no. Yeah.
Okay, so you have to. So now we're getting to a standard, Joseph, to determine whether someone's a true prophet or a false prophet. The first necessary component is that all of their prophecies that they say will come to pass must come to pass.
Yes.
Okay, and
if
you're saying
in the name of the Lord, yes. So if it's in our scripture, for example, in Doctrine and Covenants, then you can, it's in the name of the Lord, yes.
Okay, wait a second. So how do you determine it's in the name of the Lord or not?
If he says it's in the name of the Lord, like all throughout the Doctrine and Covenants, it starts with that. So
it sounds
I'm assuming,
like,
go ahead.
It sounds like what you're saying is that that if he makes a false claim, it's almost similar to like Catholics ex cathedra, where it's like, no, he wasn't sitting in the seat when he said it. So are you saying Joseph Smith can get a ton of things wrong and still be a true prophet, because you're just going to say the things that he got wrong, he wasn't really truly saying it in the name of God?
What did he get wrong? I'm just trying to get what you're...
What did he get wrong? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well...
And I have examples of some that... many significant ones that he got right.
Okay.
So if you want to give me...
Well, I mean, a lot of people can get things right. That's what's in question. Revelation on December 25th, 1832, Pearl of Great Price, 1851, Doctrines and Covenants. Smith predicted a war from the South Carolina would engulf the world. It did not engulf the world, resulting in the destruction of all nations. That didn't happen.
So I have that exact scripture and prophecy, and no, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I think and it's in Doctrine and Covenants 87, okay? And he says, wait, where the heck is 87? Oh, my bad. The very beginning, okay, here we go. The Lord, thus saith the Lord, okay, there's a prophecy, concerning the wars that will shortly come to pass, beginning at the rebellion of South Carolina, okay? This was nearly 30 years before the Civil War occurred. But here's the thing. Look at the first word. Wars. It's wars. If you have it before you, is that plural or is that singular? Is he saying a war, a single war will engulf the whole world? Now, you might think I'm just being nitpicky, but again, if this is his prophecy and this is his word, the word of God through him, I think it's important that we understand exactly what's being said.
Yeah, so anybody who predicts while humanity's alive there's going to be wars, that's going to be your standard for a true prophet? Cool, we're all prophets. Watch this. There's probably going to be a war in the future.
If you want to dive into this, I'm happy. Like, here's the thing. The things he did get were spot on. For example, I mean, he got all of it. What I'm trying to say is the ones that were specific to the Civil War happened. That's really not in question. But also, it's not just he's not just simply saying there's going to be a lot of wars probably or whatever. I think anyone could have guessed that. He specifically said, starting from the Civil War and onward, there will be wars that engulf the whole world. Okay, what happened after the Civil War?
And destruction of all nations. Where did we see the destruction of all nations?
Yeah, so I would see that as, well, first of all, that was partially fulfilled already, but if you go to the very end of the prophecy, he's also talks about the coming of the Lord too, which shows, okay, some of this is stuff that's going to happen. I think you and I believe, maybe you don't, I'm not super familiar on the Orthodox faith, but that eventually that will happen with the second coming of the Lord. So I'm not sure what
wait a
you're
second.
saying he's getting wrong.
Okay, so then
prophecies haven't happened yet, so it's not
then
wrong.
I'm a true prophet then. So anybody who makes a claim, as long as it's not fulfilled and there's a chance for it to be fully fulfilled.
So Jim, I'm calling on you to say in the name of the Lord a specific prophecy that no one could guess. And I'm calling on you to do that, right? And if you don't want to damn yourself, maybe you should refuse.
No, why would I claim to be a prophet, right? So me being
because
a prophet,
you're saying you could do it. You're saying
no. According to your standard, according to your standard, as long as someone declares an ambiguous thing like there's going to be wars, you don't have any level of specificity required for someone.
There is a lot of specificity in that particular prophecy.
No, it's not. You just said no, dude. You just got so ambiguous. You completely obfuscated the whole thing. I just said he predicted a war from South Carolina would engulf the world, not the United States. The world.
Wars
would engulf
South Carolina.
Okay, the war. Wars. Yeah, fine.
Read the section. I know the section.
Dude,
do you know the section?
Dude, you're saying he's claiming that South Carolina would engulf the world in wars.
You didn't listen.
He also said the destruction of all nations.
I encourage you to pull up the section.
Stop dodging. Resulting in the destruction of all nations. When does that have to happen?
Does he specify exactly when that'll happen? I don't know.
No, because he's a faker. Okay, let's go to the next one. The Revelation. The Revelation. No. Look, Patrick, if I make a claim and I say, and I go, this is going to happen in the name of God, it's not fair to go by when. What are you talking about? You're the one who said hyper specific, right?
The beginning of the Revelation is talking about a very specific war. He says wars that will begin at South Carolina. So wars that will continue. And if you look, and I have actually the database here. Since the war in the Civil War, there has not been a single year since then where a new war, or I would say an outbreak that resulted in at least 1,000 deaths in any country.
Was he specific with the destruction of all nations?
Yeah. Did he say when that would happen?
When? Yeah, by when?
He didn't say when.
That's not called specific, okay? That's called not specific.
The beginning specific. It started in South Carolina, which happened nearly 30 years after he did.
Revelation on September 22nd.
There wasn't a war before that in America.
Okay, next one. 1832, Doctrines and Covenants, section 84. He predicts that the New Jerusalem will be established in the West Missouri area in his generation. That means when he's alive. Still didn't happen.
When did he say that? Can you show me the reference that you're talking about?
I just Doctrines and Covenants, section 84, 1-5.
Yeah, temple built in Missouri, right? Jackson County, Missouri specifically, and this will be in this dispensation. But where is he saying in his lifetime? Where does he say that?
In his generation?
In this dispensation. Well, it's a long section.
Dispensation? Who determines which dispensation is? Which section? Well, no, dude. This is so vague. It's like I say Joseph Smith predicts New Jerusalem will be established in West Missouri in his generation.
How do you know it won't yet? No, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say in his generation.
Oh, so what does he say?
In this dispensation is what he said. So if you want to argue that, well, this is all very vague, that's fine. But here's
what's
the
a
thing,
dispensation?
You're coming very strongly with a claim saying he said this.
It's
and it turns
your
out
claim.
I'm pointing out that you don't. No, you claimed it. I didn't claim he said in this generation. I'm pointing that out.
I'm asking you what is. No. I'm asking you to tell me what a dispensation is. Is that 20 years? Is that 30 years? Is that 100 years? Is that 1,000 years?
This particular dispensation is until the coming of Christ. That's what it is. I mean, you don't have to like it. That's literally what it is.
So
from
every
the time of the restoration till So I don't know what the problem is with that one, but
okay. Kinderhook plates. The plates were created as a means to test the prank for the Mormons, right? By the 3 locals in Kinderhook. They created the plates, buried them. Upon recovering they reached Smith. He claimed that they were ancient texts from a descendant Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Smith claimed he was translating them, having them presumed lost. They were rediscovered in 1920, reaching Brigham Young University in 1966. Matching scientific studies with the contemporary writing made it clear that these were a fraud. So he's claiming something's true and it's a fraud. Kinderhook plates. Was he saying in the name of God or what? Just not.
Well, he took it with the intent to, if it was real, to translate it like he did the Book of Mormon. But did that ever happen? It didn't lead to anything. So, and there's also very spotty actual journals of what he specifically said and who reported that too. So, is there a question like, well, did it look like he was being led into it at the beginning? Perhaps the way you read the history, but it doesn't matter because it didn't lead to anything.
Okay. Did Joseph Smith?
I think it's just one of the weakest arguments. So
did Joseph Smith receive revelation that he could marry multiple women?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and how is it that he received revelation to marry multiple women, but future prophets, presidents of the Mormon Church, went back on the revelation of God?
Well, there's a great scripture for that too, but just while I find it, I can go ahead and start answering that. I would think it's the same reason why, for example, when Jesus gave the command when he first ordained his apostles to take this to the house of Israel, but not to the Samaritans, okay? And you might not see the connection yet, but just bear with me. Not to the Samaritans, not to the Gentiles, to the house of Israel. What did he say after he was resurrected? It sounds like almost like a policy change to me. He said, now take the gospel to the entire world. Okay, now this is the Savior himself. So the reason I lead off with that is because we have example not only in the Book of Mormon, but also the Bible, of the Lord saying one thing that is needed at a particular time. It's not because he changed his mind, it's because it was needed, varying reasons depending on the circumstance we're talking about. So that's not a problem to me. With the framework of our revelation and stuff, that's not a problem that later on they were now told to stop doing it. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers it. But could I? Is it right if I ask you something, or are you not done yet? I can.
Well, I know. I mean, it's your claim for what's considered true. You have an epistemic problem as well. Joseph Smith says that there are certain things missing from the Bible, including Genesis, right?
Yeah.
And then he says that from the death of the apostles, that some brewing apostasy occurred, and we lost the proper interpretation of the Bible, right? Including people removing things, right?
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah.
Okay, and so what other evidence is there other than Joseph Smith saying so that anything was ever removed from Genesis?
With Genesis, so we have evidence of the Bible today missing pieces for sure, but now Genesis specifically, no, I don't. If you're saying from the historical viewpoint, you got to remember the apostasy you're referring to. We call that. We're specifically the great apostasy, but you're going at the argument assuming that a series of apostasy, like kind of like a secular thing, hasn't happened before that, and it absolutely has. So we never claimed that like the Catholic Church or the English Church of Rome or whatever went into the Jewish Bible. And we're not saying that, but it's very possible that apostasy, not the great apostasy, but apostasy took place before that. Prior.
Do you remember what my question was?
Yeah, I said I don't have historical evidence that things were taken out of
the answer is none. So when I ask, is there any evidence other than Joseph Smith saying so that things were removed from Genesis? The answer is no, there's no evidence of that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have historical evidence, no.
Now, given that there Now, when I add counter evidence to that, right? So as early, the Dead Sea Scrolls, if we're generous with the dating methods, early as 300 BC, leading up to 70 AD, destruction of the Second Temple, and the Jews at the time, the Essenes, would bury the text. Included in that text in the Dead Sea Scroll are copies of Genesis. Now, if the apostasy is the time period between the death of the apostles and Joseph Smith in the 1800s, that's when things were removed from Genesis, and that's where things were lost in translation. How is it that something's preserved from 300 BC, and even today, when it was found in 1947 or something, it matches not only the current preserved texts of Genesis, but from Christians, but also matches the Jewish texts of Genesis. So, you know what would have to happen if Joseph Smith, his claims were true? What would have to happen is someone would have to dig up the Dead Sea Scrolls, change all of it to something else, right? Take things out, rebury it, and somehow have it match all of the texts from the Jews. Because to say Genesis was manipulated, but even current Torah followers, Judaizers and such, they actually have an early Genesis that matches our early Genesis. So you have to believe that the early apostate church, the whore of the devil, somehow got into the Jewish tradition during the time where Jews actually rejected Christianity. So the same doctrines that Mormonism rejects, because they're claimed to be formations of the councils from the fake church, why wouldn't the apostate church, if they were going to manipulate the Torah, why wouldn't they manipulate Judaic practices and beliefs to be in line with Trinitarianism? It just so happens to be the case that the Jewish people today, preserved through text, through practice, and through oral tradition, preserve the same Genesis that we have, that you're claiming was manipulated, and there's no evidence for it. In fact, there's counter evidence to that. What do you have to say about that?
We never we never claimed that the Church of the Devil, whore of the earth, was the one that manipulated the Jewish Bible, because apostasy, again, it's part of our doctrine, and I don't blame you for not knowing this, but it's a cyclical thing. That's we've taught it. I mean, I've taught it as a missionary. We've always taught this. It's a cyclical thing. So you're assuming that our claim is that during that era of the great apostasy following the death of the apostles, you're saying that that's what we're claiming, is that it occurred from that point and they changed. That's not what we're saying at all.
But when are you claiming that Genesis was manipulated and books were removed?
Sometime during the ancient.
You already told me there's no evidence of it. So why are you believing, and why are you claiming that something during the ancient era? By the way, how far back are you going to go, dude? Patrick, do you understand that the dating methods, if accurate, place Genesis unaltered back to 300 BC?
Yeah, that would be going on the assumption that mankind since back then, which the Bible says it's not, were never corrupting God's word or becoming wicked. They literally were. So it doesn't matter how far, as far back as humans existed. That's definitely
cool.
a possibility.
So the apostasy, so that's
inconsistency.
That's, of course it is, because you claim, your theology claims, the apostasy happens after the death of the
great
apostles.
apostasy. Great.
Yeah.
There has been apostasy before that. There's been a series of apostasy before that, and that's in our doctrine. That's
that's a claim. No, I know that's a claim. Do you know the difference between?
But it's okay to admit that you misunderstood and misrepresented.
I didn't.
I didn't about the apostasy. That's the great apostasy that you're specifically referring to.
It makes your position worse. Now you need two apostasies.
But it's okay that you didn't. No, there was one great apostasy that we refer to as the great apostasy. There were many series of apostasies.
Cool. When did the great apostasy start?
The great apostasy, which has nothing to do with the Jewish Bible, but it started. We see it as more like a sunset. So I don't have a date for you, but roughly probably
just like gender,
maybe 200 years. Yeah,
okay, so after, 200 AD?
Yeah.
Okay, any like evidence of an apostasy other than believing Joseph Smith happened at 200?
It's just funny because I would ask Israelites, why are you wandering the desert for 40 years? All because Moses told you to. Like, that's kind of how it works, Jim. Like, I feel like I'm debating with an atheist right now. Like,
that's not an argument,
That's how it's always worked.
It's your claim.
I mean, I'm saying the logic is consistent with our framework.
No, it's not. No, you don't have any ecclesiology historically. In other words, you can't track a true church that's called Mormonism back to the year 200. Let me ask you this. Forget the apostasy, the great apostasy for a second. Hold on a second. Yeah, that's the claim. It's restored. That's what's in question, dude. So if I take you back to the year 200, is there any evidence of an operating church that believes Mormon doctrine in the year of 200?
No, because they didn't call it Mormon. So
what was it?
Of Christ's Church? Yeah, it was called the Church of Jesus
and
Christ.
Okay, any evidence of the Church of Jesus Christ?
Any evidence of the Church of Jesus Christ? Yes.
Bible? Anything that anything
the New Testament Gospels, yeah.
No, the New Testament Gospels are in question, right? They're in question. Why? Because do you know when the New Testament?
We can get into that. Why that doesn't?
I'm talking.
But that's fine.
Who compiled the New Testament?
The church. It happened roughly like 16. I'm off on my dates. No, 14, 11.
4th century.
Like that, right? Yeah. So what was it? The Church of Rome, I guess, or the Catholic Church?
So the false church.
Yeah, tell me something, and this will help.
No! Stop it! No! I'm running a line. No! Do not. Afraid. You're dodging right now. Look, you just said.
It's fine.
No. The false church compiled the New Testament in the 4th century, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I asked you, when is this true church of Jesus Christ exist? Somewhere in the 200s, right? So
that's when the apostasy started to occur. But yeah.
Okay. So in the 4th century, when the false church compiles the New Testament, right? You're trusting the compilation of the New Testament from a false church, right?
Right, for the same reason that the very crucifixion of Christ, which was essential for the salvation of mankind, was physically brought about by wicked men.
We're not talking
inspired
about
by the devil. That's same
No,
logic.
it's not.
So yeah, God,
no, it's not.
God can bring about the progress of His plan through the whore of all the earth. Why couldn't He? Do you believe He can do that? Or
no. You have a problem here. The question isn't whether or not God could work through false things or something. The question is, do you rely on a false church that is in Nephi referred to as the church, the whore of the earth? Do you rely? Is it yes or no? You rely.
I don't rely on the false church any more than I rely on the wicked Pharisees to bring about the crucifixion. It was God doing so.
Oh, God worked.
Again, I feel like I'm arguing with an agnostic or something. This is kind of
weird. That's not an argument, dude. So I don't care how you feel. I know a lot of your theology is based on feelings, but the thing is, you have an epistemic problem because you can't trace historically your church back to history, right? So it puts it into question. If a false church compiled the Bible, the New Testament, but your theology relies on the account of the Bible, you don't even know which is true or not. For instance, how do you know the story of Christ? You, Patrick, how do you know the story of Christ?
Through the Word of God in the Bible, yeah.
Yeah, the Word of God, right, and the Bible. You're talking about Holy Scripture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know the true account of Christ through a Bible that was maintained and kept by the Church of Satan.
Through God's miracle, yes. Correct.
So how did you determine?
The devil inspired the Pharisees to crucify Jesus.
How did you determine which of the compiled Bible that the Church of Satan compiled? How did you determine which of it was true? How do you know the true story of Christ and his apostolic college was actually a real thing or not? How do you know that?
How do I know that? I think I know it for the same reason that the Bible says where Jesus appeared to those disciples in Emmaus.
The Bible's in question, bro.
Yeah, I've already explained why that's not an issue, but hold on.
Do you hear my question?
They said, did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us? The only reason they knew it was Christ was because God spiritually told them.
You're relying on
so that's my reason as well.
Dude, Patrick, do you understand? You don't understand the problem. You don't understand the problem you're in.
I don't see the problem you're in.
I asked you, how do you know the story of Christ and what he taught, his Great Commission, right? Did Christ establish a true church with his Great Commission, right?
Yes.
How do you know that happened if it's compiled and told to you by the Church of Satan? I'm just asking you methodology.
I feel like I answered this already, but...
You said the Bible. That's what's in question. That's incoherent.
Can I answer? I know that because with God's grace and God's power, which I don't know why you would question this, could use even the abominable church, even the church of the devil, to inspire the. Because again, we don't we claim the creeds were of the devil, and if Dallin H. Oak specifically says this, and I have the quote. We're not referring to the faithful followers of, say, creeds.
Patrick,
so there's no problem there. I don't see.
Patrick, you totally dodged the question. I didn't ask whether or not it's possible.
I know it because God inspired the people in the whore of all the earth to produce the Bible.
That's the claim. I asked you, how do you know? Look, dude, listen. I asked you, how do you know the claim?
Hold on.
Patrick.
All right, I'll tell you how I
asked.
Because
God no, you're not listening.
That's how I know.
God told you.
God told me.
What did I say? Every Mormon, when pressed, either turns to Joseph Smith or they become their own revelator.
No, that's not. No,
God told you what parts of the Bible were true.
He confirmed to me what was revealed through his prophet. He confirmed it to me. He didn't give me a new truth. He didn't give me a new revelation that comes through the prophet.
No. When did he confirm it to you?
When did he confirm it to me? I don't know the date, but it was a ongoing process, really. But it started with direct answers through prayer. Yeah, he answered me. He told me.
He told you what exactly?
He told me that the Book of Mormon is true, and as a result, then he told me
that's
that
weird.
Joseph Smith was
That's
the
weird,
prophet.
Patrick. Patrick, that's really weird because I've been praying a lot, and God told me that Joseph Smith is false. How do we determine who's right?
That's fine. That's fine. Because here's the thing: I can't get in your head and know if you're.
Do you understand what I just asked you?
I'll accept.
I didn't ask you.
I don't agree with your revelation. I don't think it was revelation, but
what did I ask you?
I can't question you on it because
what did I ask
don't know
you?
If you're lying.
What did I ask you?
How do we know if it's true, or how do we know who's correct?
Yeah, you just said God told me so. I use the same system and say God told me Joseph Smith is a liar. How do we determine who has the right whispers from God?
It's you just ask God just like how they did in the New Testament.
That's what's in question.
That's the answer. I mean,
Dude.
You want me to show you God that the video where he showed up to me or something?
Cool.
Like, no,
cool. The true church, right? The church.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, from your view, the false church. They also claim that they were guided through the Holy Spirit to compile the New Testament. Hold on a second.
I believe they were.
Oh,
the Bible.
That's a contradiction. Hold on, that's a contradiction. No. Let me lay out the contradiction for Patrick.
I just told you why that's not.
God used a false church to compile a false doctrine, right?
No.
It was false.
No.
Yeah, it was false. If it needed to be corrected, it was false.
Well, yeah, through imperfect instruments. That's not
another contradiction. Is the New Testament, dude? Listen, is the New Testament leading up to Joseph Smith laying his eyes on it? Is it complete and true?
By that, if you mean inerrant, no, but it is true. Yes.
Okay. Wait, it's error. It's full of error, but it's also true.
Yeah, it's not perfect because here's the thing:
is this coherent, you guys?
I believe, even though it's a God-given miracle that we even have the Bible, but I think it would be ignorant to assume that through all that it's been through, it didn't receive its fair share of
Can you tell me a mathematical claim? Can you tell me a mathematical claim that's erroneous but true?
No, because we're not talking about math.
Can you tell me any statement?
Heaven through imperfect people.
Dude, you're all over the place right now. You just claimed that the Bible is.
You just don't like the answers.
Dude,
fine, but
no, you're not listening. You're not listening.
Clarify even more if you allow me to.
You're not listening
to
me.
It's okay.
No, you're talking over me and you're not listening. So you held the belief that leading up to Joseph Smith, the Bible was full of error, also missing verses, but you also hold that it's true.
Yeah, well, it's historic fact that there are missing books. So that's
I didn't ask what you do. Focus.
So that's fine.
You just said that the Bible is full of error and missing verses, and it's also true.
Yeah, again, if on the sense of true that you're talking about, it's true because it led to the inspiration of the restoration of the gospel. Like, there can be truth in there, but we can't. I think it'd be ignorant to suggest that God working through imperfect vessels, imperfect instruments. It's not that God was imperfect; it's that we were imperfect. But that's fine because here's the thing: we're talking about the Almighty, all-powerful God that can use such things to bring about His purposes. I don't know why you would disagree with that as a Christian. It's kind of weird. Do you believe that the church went into darkness? Did it die? Did the gates of hell prevail against it? Like, what happened through the apostasy leading up to Joseph Smith? What happened?
To the church. Like, what was
very
this? Like, for
generally.
instance, like, I'll ask in a different way. The year 1700, you're walking around with people who so-called Christians. They're not actually Christians according to you, because they're not a part of the true restored Mormon church, right? So is there any true church that's on the earth before Joseph Smith and after the apostasy?
Truth unto exaltation, the fullness of the truth? No, there wasn't.
So God isn't so Christ's church isn't his body.
Any more than his body that died and was resurrected? Sure, it was his body, yeah.
So when Christ says, I established a church and the gates of hell will not prevail, you're saying that was actually false?
No, because prevail would mean that the devil won. And it wouldn't mean prevailed any more than they prevailed when they killed Jesus.
So the true church
died. He didn't. The devil didn't prevail because he was resurrected.
Was Christ's true church alive in the year 1700?
No.
Okay, so it died.
And came back, correct. So
Christ's church died. You having a second death and resurrection of Christ himself, right? What is death?
Church, yes.
What is death from the Christian perspective?
Death is the separating of the spirit from the body.
Yeah.
That's what death is.
Yes. So death, right? So you're saying Christ's true church will not be subject to death, basically.
I'm saying the devil won't prevail, meaning he won't win. Any more than the devil prevailed when Jesus was crucified. Did he?
Okay, cool.
Did the devil prevail when Jesus died? No, because we know in the end Jesus won. So I don't see this as an issue at all.
It is an issue.
Like how he revived Lazarus.
It is an issue because you just made his resurrection meaningless, because now you need a resurrection and death of the church. That's why it's meaningless. If Christ tramples death, right, for all of humanity to be healed, right? If that was the purpose of him lowering himself, condescending and then ascending, if that was the purpose of the whole thing, and he established a church with the apostles and he says, go forth and teach this, go forth and teach my who I am and what I am, right? I am the truth. I am the way. But you're saying that his way, the Great Commission, according to Mormonism, failed, right?
Not at all. No.
It died, dude.
Why that doesn't make sense. I can explain it if you want. But I know you don't want the explanation because that would show how your understanding is flawed. But that's
okay, Patrick. Look, I'll take it one sentence at a time. This is probably too much for you. Christ established a true church with the apostles. Yes or no? You're not listening again. Yeah, exactly. So listen up. Christ established a true church and taught the apostles to spread it, right?
Correct.
The apostles died, and the true church, from your words, also died, right?
In a sense, died, yes. I'm using it as a comparison, but yes.
It died, right? You're saying that Christ's Great Commission failed because his church died.
No. You want me to explain why I'm not saying that?
How is that not a contradiction?
I'm happy to explain it.
Tell me how that's not a contradiction.
Because Jesus' mission when he was here in mortality to pay for our sins, take upon himself all of our infirmities and sins, and then to die and be resurrected so that we will be resurrected in the last. That wasn't dependent. That part is for everyone, whether you're an Latter-day Saint, whether you're Christian Orthodox. That part is not dependent on his church being alive or not alive at any point, because that's what's called salvation, and that's given to everyone. Even atheists, everyone will be resurrected.
We're not talking about soteriology, bro. You totally avoided the contradiction. No, we're not. We're talking about Christ.
That's what Jesus did not fail, is what I'm telling you.
Dude,
his mission was complete.
Didn't say Jesus failed. I didn't say Jesus. I said his Great Commission.
Okay, then that might just be a misunderstanding with the
Did Christ
so I apologize. What do you mean by his commission?
You're not listening. That's why you're not listening.
No, Christ I heard the word. I just misunderstood
Christ
what you meant.
Established a church. He set out the Great Commission with his apostles. The apostles then became 70. And then the 70 taught the bishops, right? And wherever the bishop is, that's where the church is. You're saying the church died in a sense. If the church died in a sense, then Christ's Great Commission died in a sense, in the same sense.
So how does that mean? Right. So, and it didn't fail any more than when Jesus died,
his
mission failed. So it didn't fail. It didn't fail.
No. So the church didn't die.
No, it died.
Dying is not a failure.
It didn't ultimately fail. Just like how when Jesus died, he didn't ultimately fail because he was resurrected. What?
So you're saying the church was resurrected?
In a sense, it was resurrected. Yes.
So there is no way to practice Christianity and know the truth of Christ between the apostasy and Joseph Smith. Then
the fullness, no, but our doctrine.
Okay. And that's because because the apostles died, right? They had the keys.
That was the start of it. That was what it kind of initiated it. Yeah.
Okay. The start of the apostasy is the death of the apostles, correct?
Yeah. I think that's accurate, yeah.
Under your theology, is John the apostle still alive?
Yes, just like Christ.
That's the contradiction.
Nope. Christ is alive. Why isn't Christ walking around the streets? Why isn't he doing a White House like press conference? No. The same sense. John is alive, but he's not like.
He's not physically alive in matter?
No, he's physically alive. He's translated.
Hello? That's a contradiction, bro.
He's alive.
You just contradict yourself.
What am I contradicting? What am I contradicting? He's alive.
I'll tell you.
Just like
Listen up and I'll tell you, bro. You're Spurgeon. Listen up. You just said, John, okay. I asked you. Look, you're not listening, dude. You're in cognitive dissonance mode. You're not listening.
No, I know you're upset. It's okay.
I'm not upset.
Laugh. It's a little humorous.
I'm not. You're trying not to laugh. You're the one in the corner here and digging many, many holes, right? Listen to what I'm saying. You just said the death of the apostles is what set off the great apostasy. John is an apostle and he's not dead. So tell me,
the death of all the other apostles. Yes.
Except
so sorry
for John.
If I wasn't as clear. Yes. Sorry if I wasn't as clear.
Okay,
the doctrine states.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you think this doesn't help you, by the way. If John the apostle is still alive today somewhere in Miami, maybe he's going to do a fresh and fit appearance and tell us all that Mormonism is true. Why is it, Patrick, that if the last apostle under your view, why is it under your view the last apostle who holds the keys to the true church of Mormonism isn't coming forward and saying, listen, guys, Joseph Smith was right? Why isn't that the case? Where is he hiding out?
Probably for the same reason that Christ himself, who you and I agree is alive in the literal sense, he's alive, is not showing up to you or to Jake every other day being like, I'm alive, believe it. It's probably the same reason. John is a resurrected being now, so he is alive.
Dude.
Yeah.
Dude, you're not
I don't understand why
question.
that's confused. I just answered your question. I don't know why you're confused.
Listen, Patrick, you're really slimy.
Answered your question.
No, you're not. You didn't answer. Listen to me.
You can admit that you didn't understand our views
as much as
you thought you did. It's okay to admit that. It's totally okay.
Shush for a second. Does Christ have a temporal body in the time-space reality like he's walking around in San Francisco right now?
I don't know what that means.
Does Christ have an ascended, glorified body in heaven, or does he have a temporal body right now on earth?
He's in heaven, yeah.
Great. Does John have John have a temporal body right now, according to your theology?
Temporal, as in
physical,
like mortal? What
you
do you
can
mean?
find
tangible.
Mortal.
Yes,
he's walking
body.
around.
Yeah.
Yes, that's.
I didn't say he was walking around, but yes, just like Jesus, he's with Christ. And actually, by the way, our Book of Mormon clarifies this. The Book of Mormon clarifies this because there's others that we call the three Nephites who asked for the same thing that the Lord gave John, that they wouldn't taste of death. But in the Book of Mormon, it explains that they were alive for hundreds of years, but eventually, because the wickedness was so great, the Lord in his wisdom told them, now is the time for you to basically retreat, right? So he took them to heaven. That's what happened. So it's fine if you didn't understand our claim of John. It's fine, but we're not claiming that he's walking around the earth.
Oh, you're not claiming that he's on earth right now? No.
No,
you're not claiming that. Okay, so he's
could
spiritually alive.
Yeah, he could appear, but no, not
he could
he's
appear?
Tangibly alive. He's tangible. He's physically alive, like Christ is.
Tangible is physical, right? Dude, do you
Yes.
understand the distinction between tangible, concrete, and immaterial? Do you understand?
Does Jesus have a tangible body? I'm confused. Do you not believe that?
Jesus
we consume
is
alive, right?
we consume Christ through the Eucharist. In that sense, material and immaterial.
Doctrine. Okay.
We're talking about God, right? We're talking about, but as far as our theology, I'm not even sure if you believe in the ascension. I'm not even sure you believe Christ himself has a new glorified body. Your claim, but distinct, right? Christ, in a sense, is still categorically different than how you're claiming John. When you say John has a tangible physical body, he can walk around in Miami right now, right?
He could, just like Christ could. You're
great. If John could walk around Miami and he could also walk around Missouri and Utah, can you tell me why John, the last person who held the keys of the true church, didn't come forward in some way and tell us that Joseph Smith was a true prophet?
Yes, the Book of Mormon gives the answer to that. The same reason that the three Nephites at some point were taken by the Lord because the wickedness was so abound. And we got to remember the reason for the apostasy, the overarching reason. Again, I said it initiated with the death of the other apostles, but the overarching reason for the apostasy in the first place was because of man's wickedness. That's the same reason he hasn't told John to go and do missionary work or whatever. The same reason he told the three Nephites not to do it after a certain time. That's why. I mean, it's not that.
So Christ told John to stop carrying forth his Great Commission.
Yeah, because it wasn't its timing until it needed to be restored.
When did Christ tell
everything in the
John?
Lord's timing, right?
Hold on. When did Christ tell John to stop carrying forth the Great Commission?
I don't know exactly when. I don't know the date. But the fact is, what's most important that he did at some point.
Oh, so the claim he did at some point, but you can't tell me when. Do you think that's a strong argument?
That wasn't even my argument. I'm answering your question.
You just said that John didn't carry forth.
That wasn't my initial.
That's
not what I'm presenting as my debate. I'm just answering your question. That's true. Whether it's a strong argument or not.
Do you think that's a good position to say to make the affirmative claim that John, who's still alive, who could assume a human body and tell people about Christ's Great Commission, carry forth what he was told to, right in the Great Commission? You're saying Christ told him, "Hey, wait up. I really want my church to go into darkness for 2,000 years so that a scam artist who wants to have sex with a lot of different women can restore the faith. Hold up, John the Apostle. We got a better one coming. Hold on. Can you watch some soccer? I'll tell you when to come back, okay?"
You're funny, bro. You're funny.
Yeah, it is funny. The whole theology is funny. Now that's enough on that. Let's go into metaphysics. Do you believe that divinity is humanity realized?
Yes, and you have to forgive me because again, I think sometimes the vernacular uses a different face. We use it differently, but I think I understand what you're saying. But yeah.
Okay, so the divinity requires a process.
Yes.
Okay. God the Father required a process to become divine.
From what we know, yeah. There was some process that we don't have detail on, but yeah.
Okay, if God the Father was once a man and needed to become divine, what was the standard of divinity if it wasn't him?
I don't actually know. I don't know. I can theorize, but I don't know.
Well, that's incoherent. How would you know God the Father becomes divine if you don't have a standard for what's divine?
Why is it incoherent to admit that there's mysteries of God? I don't understand. Why is that coherent? Especially coming from an Orthodox Christian. Why is no, I said I don't know. I don't know the details, but
yeah, I know.
I'm a Christian, and when I say there's some mysteries we don't know about God, I don't know why that's a.
Well, no, the answer isn't. No, the answer isn't that there is a mystery, because to assume someone can become divine is actually claiming non-mystery. Here, I'll ask it a different way. If you don't know what the standard for divinity is, how do you know that God the Father, once a man, became divine? How would you know if he becomes divine?
I'm just making sure I understand what exactly you're asking here. How do I know? Because it's the doctrine of the Lord's True Church, and I already got confirmation that the church is true. That's how I know.
So reaffirm the statement. I got it. So that's the thing, is like if you say divinity is humanity realized, and then God the Father, who was once a man, had to achieve divinity, you're now saying there's a status called mortal man who then achieves through some process divinity. But you can't make that claim that a man can achieve divinity if you don't know what divinity is.
Divinity is a perfect immortal being. That's divinity. Are you asking what model he had when he was mortal?
Hold on.
Again, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, let's go with that. If divinity is a perfectly immortal being, and God the Father was once a man needing to become that immortal being, then there is now a new being that has to exist that's not God the Father becoming that immortal being.
Yeah, what's the question? I'm not.
The question is, who is God while God the Father is becoming God?
Again, I don't know. I have no clue.
If God the Father is becoming God, is God non-existent?
No, I didn't say that. I just said I don't know who God was. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
this is an area that very little has been revealed, so it's fine. Like it's one of those things. Like whenever I talk to Trinitarians, and it conclusively ends with, "Well, it's really a mystery." Well, I have more of a problem with when we're talking about the very nature of the God we worship. We worship the Godhead, God the Father, Jesus Christ. If we're talking about his very nature, but we say his nature is a mystery, that's where I take That's where I have a problem with that. Right?
You have a problem
I'm
being that you just said you don't know what God is?
I just said mysteries are fine. I admit God, there's mysteries surrounding God that we don't know because it's God. But when we're talking about his and I'm not talking about the one before him, I'm talking about the God I worship, Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ. If we don't even know, if his very nature, like the Trinity, is just really kind of a big mystery, that's an issue. Like, you don't even know who you worship if that's the case. And my question is,
that's really funny coming from you. Which of the eternal, infinite gods do you worship?
I worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the God I worship.
And did that God have to be a man at one point and become God?
That's what's been revealed, yeah.
Okay, then that necessitates that he has a father. Who's the real father?
Perhaps.
Who's the real God?
I don't know. Perhaps.
Yeah. Who's the real God?
The real God. Again, we're talking in like two dimensions when we're talking about the nature of the literally God, the creator and ruler of the whole universe. So, I mean, you're speaking in like these two-dimensional kind of arguments when we're talking about something this vast. So
it's actually really silly, Patrick. If God the Father was once a man and he had to achieve divinity, that means he also had a father.
Perhaps. I can't make a definitive statement.
Well, it's called an entailment. It's necessarily so that if God the Father needed to become...
In our normal understanding, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so from your view, is God the Father eternally uncreated and divine?
Yes, because that gets into how even though he created our spirits, we were called things called intelligences, which were basically like... Lack of a better word, spiritual.
Can I give you a direct?
Eternal. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I said eternally divine. So if God the Father is
eternal, I don't know.
Wait, he's eternal? Who is he the eternal God, eternally divine or not?
He's eternal. I don't know what you're asking. He has always existed, just like you and I have always existed. Yes.
In the way he exists, does he hold God status forever?
He was not in his state forever. No, that's what you're asking. He was not in his current state
so this is where the incoherency really shines, is that Mormonism holds that God the Father, the eternally uncreated being, creator of all things, wasn't always God.
Yeah, and this is interesting because I just like to point out that the actual concrete doctrine that we do have that's been revealed in a much fuller sense is the stuff that you tend to like. It didn't work out well for you, so now you're going to stuff that's very little has been revealed and we don't know. That's fine, but if you're going to criticize the truthfulness of the church and our claims, I would just suggest it'd be a lot smarter to criticize what we actually.
How long have you been debating for?
This is my first formal debate. So
why are you coaching me on debate?
I'm not coaching you on debate.
You're telling me what I should do. Listen, your metaphysics...
Yeah, because it hasn't been working out for you, so you might want to...
Oh, really? I just demonstrated that you have a belief in God, that he's not eternally uncreated as God. Let's move over to matter. Do you believe that matter itself...
That's what we do. Like, every one of them that you found that you didn't understand it as well, you kind of tend to run...
No, I got exactly what I needed from you. You said, totally God... No, Patrick, you said from your own mouth, and we could rewind the tape if you want, you said God himself was never always God. That's what you said, not me.
As far as I understand, yeah.
Okay, cool. So if he was never God...
It's a difference in belief, but it can't be incoherent if it's something that we don't even fully know yet because he hasn't revealed it all. That's fine.
No.
With our limited understanding, yeah, it's going to appear a little weird to us. That's
you
fine.
mean, and by weird you mean entirely... And by weird you mean entirely incoherent, right?
No. Again, if we had the full jigsaw, puzzle piece picture, it would make more sense. We only have, in this particular doctrine, we only have a tiny piece.
Just before we move on, fellas, maybe, Patrick, do you want to actually explain what your position is, particularly about what you think God is in this regard?
Sure. I go off of what has been revealed, right? Any other thing beyond what has been revealed through the Lord's prophets, it really comes down to speculation. What has been revealed on what Jim is asking? It's been revealed only, one, God, as we know, the God we worship, was once man. Lorenzo Snow says that. That's fine. Other than that, we have no idea. I don't know where he was. I don't know any of that. And I'm totally willing to admit that things and mysteries of God we just don't know. That's fine. Who do we worship? The God that we know, the God that has been revealed is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The God, Heavenly Father, we call the Godhead, so we don't follow the Trinity in the same sense that the creedal Christians follow. I know Talmage and others refer to it as the Trinity, but the doctrine is the Godhead, that God the Father, an immortal, perfect being.
And is this a timeless, spaceless, immaterial being?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Would God be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial, or does God have?
In a sense, yes, because all of us, in a sense, we're always are spiritual. Lack of a better word, spiritual matter.
Spirit matter.
Yeah.
Spirit matter
has always existed. Yeah, but us in like our spirits, like our formed spiritual children of God, no, they.
Yeah.
We haven't always existed though.
No. Well, hold on.
You, as you know,
Patrick,
but you have
Patrick,
in a sense, you have always.
When you say spirit matter, do you hold that spirit itself is immaterial? Like you have a spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is your spirit made of molecules of skin?
No.
Okay, and when you define matter, if you define spirit as immaterial, how do you define matter?
Matter, it's just like in science. It's just it's been a while. I don't know how they define it, but matter is just.
Would you say it's physical?
Yeah, down to the molecular level, everything. Yeah.
Okay, so when you say spirit matter, aren't you saying immaterial material?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
What I am saying is this. I'm doing a lack of a better term because we're talking about things of heaven and of the eternities and our limited human language. That's fine.
Okay.
If there's a better term or description for it, there probably is. I don't know it,
Okay.
but essentially, in a sense, all of us have always existed, and that includes God.
We always existed. I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. So you also believe that matter itself coexists eternally with God, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, God, creation, you don't have an actual creation under Mormonism. You more or less, correct me if I'm wrong, believe that God took existing matter and made it into ordered form?
Yes. So our creation, So the way we view creation is not in the kind of traditional sense where he kind of snapped his fingers.
I understand.
Yeah.
So you have matter coexisting with God, so it shares one property of the divine, which is eternally uncreated. Always been there, always will be. And you're saying it existed in a particular way, but then he formed it into an ordered way, right?
Mm-hmm. Organized is it, yeah.
He organized. So does it follow that God, before organization, God coexisted with disorganized matter?
Yeah, if in our limited, again, like kind of two-dimensional understanding, as far as we know, the universe, as far as we're concerned, is the best way I can put it. The universe, as far as we are concerned, was unorganized matter. Yes. Now,
Okay.
Again, if you're asking, what about before that? Is there alternate?
No. Stick with me.
Yeah.
Would you agree that God, under your view, is the standard for all order?
Yes.
Okay. So if God, the standard of all order, eternally uncreated, coexisted with disorder, would you agree that disorder is the privation of God?
As in, is it like the antonym? What do you mean?
A movement away from order would be a movement away from God, right?
Yeah, before he organized it. Yeah, sure.
So under your theology, God, who is the standard for order, eternally uncreated as a being, coexisted with disorganized matter, God's own privation. That is to say that disorder shares at least one divine property with God. The absence and privation of God himself shares divinity with God. That's Mormonism.
Yeah, just like he shares divinity with you and with me. We're children of God.
You're divine.
And we have divinity within us. We haven't reached perfection, but yeah, in that sense we are. So
really?
You, Jim,
hold on a second. There's imperfect divinity?
Children of God.
There's imperfect divinity?
It's not what's the word they use? There's a translation, but it's not completed. Yeah, sure.
There's incomplete divinity?
Yeah, until we reach completion.
What is divinity if it's incomplete?
Well, again, if we're using kind of our limited human language, it just depends on the sense you're talking about. That's all it means. If I'm talking about exaltation or perfection, true perfection, it's God as he is. That's perfection.
That's divinity, right?
Share divinity. Yeah, you and I, we share divinity because we're children of God, literally children of God. Yeah.
Dude, if we're children of God and we're not God and we have to become God, then we're not divine. Now, if you say God is a nature.
Potential.
Yeah, well, that's not divinity. A potential isn't divinity. Like, this is the problem, is that, which is probably why the moderator asked, we don't even know what the nature of God means because you include non-God in your nature of God. Case in point, you think God is divine fully, but he had to also achieve it, so he wasn't always fully divine. Then you say that we are divine, but we're kind of incomplete divine, which creates a new standard for divine, which means that you can have incomplete divinity.
In the sense, just here, let me compare it. In the sense, if you take a test at school, you don't get a perfect grade, okay? You can try again and achieve a perfection in that sense eventually. Now, take that to the scale of eternity, take that to the godlike scale, it's the same
God
general
make a mistake?
concept. What? Can God? No, God can't make a mistake.
Is God, can he not make mistakes because he's divine?
Because he's fully divine, completely
divine.
Yes.
Right. So now you have a kind of new divinity that's imperfect that could make mistakes. That's meaningless gibberish because the distinction between divinity and non-divinity has to be clear. It can't be a gradient. Otherwise, you get into gender studies, which is to say, well, I just think there's a space in between a boy and a girl, and I can't tell you where it is. Well, tell me one thing you can point to if you believe you're partially divine right now. What part of you, Patrick, as a mortal being right now here in space, time, and matter, what aspect of you that's divine? If you're partly divine,
my spirit's receptivity to the communications of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost. That part is divine, right? So my mortal body is not, right. My mortal body is a fallen state, in a fallen imperfect state. But my
divinity?
Spirit, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Is divinity uncreated or created?
I don't even know how to answer that because we're talking about, okay, so is it created? Again, it's going to depend on the sense you're talking. What sense in divine do you mean? Are you talking about perfect beings?
Godly.
Godliness. It's a process through the atonement of Christ and our,
Is the process created?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Did the process always exist, or is the process a benefactor of the ordered world that comes from a disordered world? In other words, when God coexisted with his own privation, disordered, chaotic matter, and he decided to organize the disorganized, chaotic matter into organized matter, only then did our spirits, from your worldview, were capable in a temporal sense, in a mortal sense, we were capable beginning this process. From that position, the process of becoming divine needed to be, wasn't always there, right? It has to be a type of a creature. In your view, not a creature, a formation.
The process was created under, so as far as we are concerned, and again, I can't speak on previous before, I don't know. But yes, as far as we're concerned, it's something that was a plan presented to us by God, a perfect plan.
So divinity is created also.
I guess the beginnings of divinity, sure.
Yeah. So divinity
like
has a beginning.
Yeah.
So divinity, there's another contradiction. Divinity is uncreated and always was there. Not P, divinity is achieved and is like a seed that needs to grow. Now, the problem with this...
Full perfection, yes, has to be achieved.
Yeah. So full perfection didn't always exist. That's the end of your entire...
My perfection and the universe, you're correct. Again...
Well, no. God himself, like I said before, if you believe God was a being who needed to achieve God, there was a time in space where God didn't exist because he needed to be achieved. So there was an absent hole where the God seat was, right? Where we were waiting. Well, no, it's an entailment, dude. You know what an entailment is?
Yes, and I'm admitting to there's areas that there's mysteries.
It doesn't matter if you don't know. It's an entailment.
That doesn't mean there's an empty throne or whatever you put it.
No, it's an entailment. That means it's necessarily so. So if it's the case that what you call God was once at a time not achieved, it follows that there was a time and space in your theology where God didn't exist.
The God we know, maybe. The God in his form, it's possible. But again, we're talking, and again, we're spending a lot of time.
I have nothing else to say.
That has not been fully revealed.
I have nothing else to say. You believe in a doctrine that holds that there was a time where God didn't exist.
All right, fellas, I think that pretty much summarizes it then. If we wanted to end it there and go into some closing statements. Unless any of you wanted to continue this, or are you happy to leave it there for now?
I'm fine with that.
Yep.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I could ask, but I mean, I think we've come to a conclusion. That's totally fine. Yeah.
All right. Well, JimBob, you going first in the opening statements?
Completing?
Closing statements? Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, I came out with the attack plan is if something's true, it's coherent logically. It doesn't follow that something's coherent. It's therefore true. You can have logically coherent views of things that aren't necessarily proven to be the case, but they're coherent. If Mormonism is true, then Mormonism would be logically coherent. Mormonism, as I've demonstrated in multiple categories of his belief, logically incoherent. Therefore, Mormonism isn't true. We go from what the standard of a prophet is. He goes from, well, the fruits. Well, I demonstrated that people who aren't prophets could equalize the fruits, right? They could actually present the same fruits as a true prophet. So that's not a good standard. Predictions. He said, well, you can be a prophet and you need to have all good predictions. As I went through only 4 of the many questionable predictions from Joseph Smith, he basically had to reorganize the language and obfuscate the language to make it work. If you have to do that much work, being that he's the one who offered the standard needed to be concise and specific. The moment I get into specificity of the claims, he then ambiguates the claims to make them work. Now, I only needed him to do that for a couple of the things, and that's enough. We go into the ecclesiology and church history. He admits there is no evidence that anything was removed from the Bible. In fact, I presented through the Dead Sea Scrolls that things weren't actually removed from Genesis by our historical account. When I ask him, did the church that he thinks he's a part of, that's the true church, exist in any meaningful way in the year 200? He says, yes. I asked for evidence. He says, I don't have any. When I ask him, did the false church of Satan compile the Bible, the New Testament, the thing that Joseph Smith interacted with as if it was partly true or mostly true or a little bit true? Yes, he says the New Testament was compiled by the church of Satan, the false church, but we can believe it. Why? Because Joseph Smith said so. When we get into metaphysics, it completely falls apart, which is my favorite part of the debate against Mormons is when you get into who God is, they think that God is some status that you can achieve, like you climb onto the roof, right? If you get up the ladder, you can sit on the God roof. The problem is, as I drew it out, it took a little bit longer than I wanted to, the statement from my opponent and any Mormon who's honest would have to say, there is a time and a place in our reality where God doesn't exist. Not only that, he's waiting to be God. There's God the Father waiting to become God, but the problem is he became mortal. That means he has a father too, which necessitates another father God who needed to be mortal to then become God again. Endless regress. It's insane. Their metaphysics is complete garbage. They couldn't possibly defend their soteriology, ecclesiology, Christology, or anything else, right? Now, the key thing here is the historical view that Joseph Smith has to claim is that Christianity died, right? My opponent actually said it. He said Christ established a true church. He set out a great commission. The Great Commission was his true church. The church, by his account, he said, died. The church itself had to go through a death and resurrection itself as a non-being, right? The bride of Christ died. This guy believes in a zombie bride. When did it die? He doesn't know. When did it actually resurrect? Well, Joseph Smith told me so, right? He says the church went into great apostasy after the death of the apostles. And then he says in the next sentence, well, yeah, the apostle John didn't die. That's a contradiction. But it's okay because John the apostle, he was walking around and he was just dying to fulfill on God's great commission, right? When he was set out to teach. But he was like, nah, I got to hold back. I got to let Joseph Smith do it in 1830. And he's like looking at his watch and he's like, damn, it's only the 1600s. I'll just hang out in Miami and play mini golf, right? We have to believe, if Mormonism is true, that the only person left to carry the keys, right? The true keys of the church, right? From their position is actually alive. But he fails to communicate. He fails to step up to the plate and say, listen, Joseph Smith is right. I'm John. Nice to meet you. I'm John, right? Nothing like that happened of the sort. He has another problem. He thinks the documents of Genesis were manipulated. Well, the problem is the Dead Sea Scrolls found in 1947 assume a preserved, unmessed with account of Genesis that not only matches the Christian account of Genesis, all the way back to the year 300, but also matches the Judaic account of Genesis, and Jews don't even agree with our theology. You have to believe in insane things to be a Mormon or an LDS. You cannot defend it. If you can't defend your theology, you should abandon your theology and become Orthodox. Thank you for the debate.
All right, thank you, JimBob. Patrick, you want to get into your opening closing statement?
Sure. And again, I have to say, just kind of humbly, thank you for the opportunity. Honestly, Jim, I know
You're
things
welcome.
got a little bit heated and everything. Also,
No worries,
Jake, I'm a
dude.
big fan of your channel, so you know, it's a unique opportunity because, like I said, as far as formal debates, it's actually my very first one. So, experience I'll remember for a long time, and it was a lot of fun. So, but the pieces of supporting evidence that I provided in the beginning, namely, you know, Book of Mormon and the impossibility of its production, I'll have to tell you, and as Jim pointed out, but sees it as a weakness where I would argue is actually a strength, it's how it supports my faith, but it's not how I know it. Okay? How do I know the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, the Book of Mormon, are true? Simply put, because God told me. Now, I understand that this is not convincing argument for other people, but it's not supposed to be. That's my evidence. That's my proof that was given to me. So why do I say that? We see in a pattern, again, in the Bible, which I've explained why it's still divine word of God, despite not being inerrant. We see it in the Bible and the Book of Mormon of a pattern of examples of God's followers coming to know him and coming to be converted to his gospel, his ways, right? His mission, as people who initially came at it with a desire. Like, what do I mean by that? Well, we see it with Peter in Matthew 16. Jesus simply asks him, who dost thou sayest that I am? Who do you say I am? And without hesitation and unequivocally, Peter said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Whereas Jesus responded, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed this unto thee, but my Father who art in heaven. Peter didn't know Jesus was the Christ because he saw all the miracles. He didn't know because he was, just because he was a witness to, his sermons and whatnot. It's because he had that desire. And how do we know that? Well, compare that to his fellow apostle Judas Iscariot, present for many of the same miracles, present for many of the same sermons and teachings. So why is it that Peter and Judas ended up in such vastly different circumstances? Why was their decision so vastly different? I chalk that up to, well, Peter wanted to believe, right? It's something that his soul sought for probably many years, maybe his whole life, the coming of the Messiah and the truths. So if any listening to this debate, anyone hearing my voice right now, has even maybe before or since the debate developed even that slight smallest desire or intrigue, then my call to you is to let that work in you and come and see. Right, all of these many different points of theology and metaphysics, which is honestly a topic that the reason it doesn't interest me that much, because again, there's so much mystery behind it, so that is not a stumbling block to my faith at all. But all of these things can come to be understood if you, as Alma put it, let that seed, the particle of faith, nourish it, or that desire to believe, and the Lord will begin to arouse your faculties and begin to enlighten your mind through the Holy Ghost. You will begin to see miracles. Like a sunrise, things will start to become clear. That is why I led off with the Book of Mormon and the impossibility of its production, which, as I predicted, Jim couldn't really give an explanation as to how that came to be, other than basically conceding that it had to be essentially, probably, or the best explanation to maybe was superhuman, which I agree, it was a superhuman task. Maybe one day I'll get an actual explanation from somebody as to how that happened. But the Book of Mormon is true. It expands on biblical truths, such as the proper mode of baptism and what it means to be a true Christian, as explained in Alma 48, one of my favorite descriptions of a Christian. It also lays out the meaning of and the specific reasons for the scattering and subsequent gathering of Israel, and the Book of Mormon's specific role in said gathering. Again, one of my favorite topics to dive into. Most importantly, the Book of Mormon brings its thoughtful and prayerful reader closer to their Redeemer, Jesus Christ, as it has done for me and millions of others today. Combine these priceless truths with the impossibility of the book's very production due to Joseph Smith's particular circumstances and the time frame in which it was produced, again, 65 days. It becomes clear that the Book of Mormon could not have been created except by some other worldly power. Many critics have conceded this point, as we've seen, but then suggest that this other worldly power must have been the devil. Jesus himself, though, already put this silly logic to rest in Matthew 12. A house divided against itself shall not stand. Claiming that the Book of Mormon, another testament of Jesus Christ, was the product of the devil is akin to the Pharisees accusing Jesus of casting out devils by the very power of the devil. The logic does not stand. But Jesus also gave the test for discerning between true and false prophets. By their fruits ye shall know them. So I call on everyone who hears my voice to honestly and genuinely observe the fruits of the prophet Joseph Smith today. You can do so by looking at the positive impact the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has on both its followers and the communities in which they live. And I am a witness of that, the positive and miraculous impact it has had on me. But I also suggest analyzing the very fruit that is the Book of Mormon, the tangible evidence. Thank you.
Well, thank you both of you gentlemen for jumping on. It was a really fun debate. We do have to go into the super chats now and see some of the audience engagement. The cut comes in and says, grifting while in another streamer's house is next level. The best part about it, though, the cut, is that actually he can't stream because he needs to install air conditioning. So I'm the only one streaming around here today. The cut also said, slap the like and hit the target. Here there's 50% VIG on the grift. Jake, love the debate and moderating. Thank you very much. Contemporary Compendium says, is that John Petrucci's mystery series guitar in the burnt orange to JimBob's right side?
No, it's a PRS, and it's like the lower grade PRS that everyone brags that feels and plays like the core model. I'm very happy with it.
The cut also said, Patrick, Jesus didn't come back within 56 years from 1835 and the government never overthrown. How many pussies are allowed to be wrong as a Mormon?
None, because he says you overthrow the government at his second coming, as in when the millennial reign begins. So that's what that's referring to. So what else did he say? Jesus didn't... Yeah.
He said 56 years, though. What's 56 years after 1835?
Yeah, so I think the prophecy he's referring to is when Joseph kept over and over asking the Lord, like, when is your second coming? He got no answer, and finally the answer he did give was, Joseph, if you live, I believe he said to the age of 30, I think it was 30, I got to double check, or however old. He said an age, and I can bring it up. Then you will see the Son of Man, returning in his glory. Now concern me no more on this matter. But if we read the age he gives, he didn't reach that age. So the prophecy was, if you live to this age, then the second coming will happen, which didn't happen. So there is no prophecy not fulfilled. It said that if he lived to that age, which again, I don't know how he would have predicted, like, I would die before that. That's kind of a bold claim. But
I have a question, Patrick. If you believe that God could speak to you directly and tell you what's true, why do you need Mormonism or Joseph Smith?
Oh, that's actually a good question, a very genuine question. So I appreciate that. We have to understand that the revelation, he gives revelation both, right, to his prophet and then to you personally. What's the point of personal revelation? Well, it's kind of a few different reasons. One is to confirm to you of these truths, right? So if I tell you, read the Book of Mormon and pray on it and ask him, he will tell you that it is true, right? So he'll confirm to you the truth as like a confirmation, right? The difference between that and his revelation to the prophet is the prophet has jurisdiction over all his saints over the whole world. Uh-huh. So he's receiving revelation for the whole world, right? Whereas I'm receiving from my jurisdiction, essentially me, right? So I'm receiving.
I understand, but the problem with that is that if someone else, and I never got a good answer to this, if someone else says I prayed on it, which many people have, and they come to the conclusion that Mormonism is false, how do you determine which one got the true result from prayer and God? How do you determine?
Well, how I determine that, and the only way I can determine that is going off of my witness. That's it, right? So I can't come up with an answer as to why he either felt he got that answer or if he's even telling the truth. Maybe he is. I'm not going to accuse you of lying. What I tell everybody, I was like, look, I invite you to pray on it. And they said, okay, if I do that, will you? I said, okay, if you do that, I'll accept it. I won't bother you. I know some members like to kind of be manipulative about it. I'll admit that. when they say, "Oh, you weren't sincere enough," here's the thing: I don't know. So if anyone listening, if you pray about it and whatever answer you get, I will just be appreciated that you took that invitation. So
it sounded like you said. It sounds like you said there isn't really a way to determine if two people pray. You come to the truth from prayer, and you think truly that God told you the Book of Mormon is true, and I come to the conclusion that it's not. I didn't hear a methodology in that answer to determine which of us is correct. Is that correct?
Right, because the methodology often, the way the Lord reveals his type of evidence is on a personal level, usually. Now, there's times where he could show himself to a multitude, that's fine. But yeah, that's why I said I can only go off my witness. That's the only thing I can
No, that's the thing in question. I went off, if I go off my witness and it says Joseph Smith is a liar and this is false, what I'm asking you is if I come from my, quote, personal revelation and I'm using the same system as you, are you saying you don't actually have a methodology for determining whether you're right or I'm wrong or I'm right? Is that correct?
On the personal revelation level, sure.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't have a methodology to say that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
That's.
Sorry, guys. I had a ghost behind me. I had to.
I saw somebody standing back there.
Unprofessional.
Yeah, I know. Normally they don't come at this time of night, but it happens. All right. The Pew Place 1370 said for 20, dudes lying. DNC on their official website say generations for New Jerusalem and cross-references it to the same use of the word in the New Testament. Apparently,
so that would be a specific. So that would be a specific time, allotted time, not an ambiguous dispensation. That's what he's saying.
Oh, okay. And he's saying generations, plural. Now, again, I have to pull up the verse, but if you're asking what the prophecy means or what our doctrine is on that, it will, yes, the New Jerusalem is the same as, what does he say? Yeah, it's the same as Zion, essentially. So, but again, I'll have to pull up the actual section again. That's fine.
Do you guys want to have it pulled up, or do you want to move on?
No, we can move on.
Yeah,
it's just something to look into, yeah.
Couple statements here. JB Peltier says, great apostasy is a baseless post hoc Protestant slop. Mm-hmm. Some guy says, if Joseph Smith were alive today, he'd definitely be working in a call center. And Austin Roberts says,
thank you, Art. Awesome.
You smoking this full JB, debunking Mormon nonsense is a strong area for you.
I like it. I like evolution and Mormonism. Thank you, Austin Roberts. He's a fellow Australian too, so you have evidence of Australia now. Austin. Shout out to Austin.
Kangaroo coins, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Suzanne Griffith says, this might be the most snark I've seen from a Muslim.
Oh,
from a Mormon.
A Muslim.
I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Well, I'd say, Patrick, God bless you and all. It's just that when you do press Mormons, the so pristine white smile that you usually see at your doorstep, suddenly the eyes change, but the smile stays the same. So, but I'm glad he came to debate.
Sometimes I respond to snark with snark, and that's just how I do it. I don't know if it's the correct way to do it, but yeah. So if it got a little too
it didn't. It was fine.
Whatever, I do apologize.
That's fine. We've seen a lot worse. AC Ghetto Rice for 10 says, Jimmy, use the argument about how Mormonism's institutional inbreeding lowers population IQ.
I think
wait, that was Muslims, yeah.
So yeah, we don't do inbreeding. I don't know what you're talking about.
I think because Andrew Wilson just did a debate where he used that against a Muslim.
I watched that one, yeah.
Draco says for 10, Patrick, thou art weighed in the balances and thou art found wanting. Anything for that?
I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. I'm not that.
It's insufficient answers to your theology. Now, I would ask you, Patrick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well did you defend your theology, do you think?
I think, considering it's my first debate.
Sure, yeah.
And I didn't really have control over.
There's charity, yeah. And you're going against the most aggressive interrogative. I would say one of the most aggressive interrogative opponents.
Yeah, I mean, I might be to my own horn here, but I feel like it wasn't that bad. I think it'd be 7 or so. But 7. This is like the whatever podcast, but
it's like I'm 10. I'm 11. Gravio says for 20, man, I didn't know Matt Walsh's brother was a Mormon. Shapiro must be really hand-rubby about that.
Yeah, as far as I know, I have no relation.
He's freaking
with
out.
Matt Walsh,
He's
but-
freaking out. Ben Shapiro.
Gerald
fan,
just Gerald does the 2.5 Men intro. Dum dum dum.
Nice to meet Jess Gerald out there in Nashville.
Yes, I think he likes that show. Jihadi Pork Farmer says for 10, he's going to have to put on his special underwear to win this one. What is meant by special underwear to win this one?
No, I love all the sarcasm. It's so fun.
There is a legit special underwear though, right?
Sure. I'm glad you're not calling it magical underwear because that's not.
Well, I mean,
but
that's
sure.
a good
If you want to
meme.
call it special, whatever. We have what's called temple garments that after you go through what we call the endowment, you're expected to wear basically undergarments night and day. And the reason we do that, now here's the thing. I believe, sure, it could, through God could use those means to physically protect you, sure, but that's not actually really the promise associated with it. We see it as like a constant reminder, like a sacred reminder. Compare that to other very more orthodox and traditional faiths. Like they also use ceremonial and like.
Wait a second. I just want to be clear on the practicality of this. Is it a boner banisher? Is that what's happening with those underwear? Is that what it's doing? Oh, okay. I thought maybe it was like constraining so you wouldn't even get the inclination.
No, it's just a reminder of our temple covenants is what I mean. It's a reminder of kind of like we use the physical reminder of the sacrament for our baptismal covenants, but the temple, since it's of a higher sacred nature, we now want not just a weekly reminder but like a constant reminder all the time. But no magic. No, we don't believe we use magic.
So JB says, hey, Patty, how many of Joseph's wives did he have to help with their homework? Just the one?
How many of his wives? I don't know. It's also interesting. The ones who actually were like, there was this practice, and again, this was revealed line upon line. They refer to it as like kingdom building and whatnot. So as far as the wives he actually civilly married, we see that number up to 4 at the most at any given time in his history. But the number used, the big like 30 whatever, those were all marriages by. And again, I know this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to people who are not familiar with our practices and stuff. And it's no surprise that Latter-day Saints, their marriages looked a little different. I think everybody knows that, but were for eternity only, essentially, because the understanding is exaltation. You need to be sealed to reach the highest degree, and receive all that God has. You need to be sealed to a spouse. So their concern was, well, there's a lot of women who are either their husbands aren't active or righteous, or they don't have a husband. So they were married, not civilly married, like they didn't move in together, but it was like of an eternal marriage.
I have a question about that actually, because after this mortal life, according to Mormonism, if you're united or let's say achieve divinity, you get some sort of, I don't know what you would call it, not a planet, but like a celestial district or something. Is that fair to say?
It's speculation, but why not?
Okay.
Maybe.
But just generally speaking, the thing I have a question about is like, if you're sealed to the woman, but she also independently achieves divinity and gets her own speculative celestial realm, is now her free will to have her own celestial realm limited by the fact that she's sealed to another man who is now a divine being? Because now they're both divine beings in the celestial realm, promised a celestial realm of their own. And if they're promised a celestial realm of their own, they can actually conjure whatever they want, including being unsealed from their previous partner, right?
No, because if our beliefs and our practice of eternal marriage is to be a pattern, like in here immortality, if it's to be a pattern of the hereafter, we see ourselves as one. We're supposed to become perfectly one, like one flesh, as we put it. So again, I don't know what we're doing I don't know the specifics of what we're doing in the eternities, but if to answer your question, I would say if this is to be served as a pattern, you and your wife are essentially inseparably sealed, right? So I don't mean like in a physical, like you can't move away from it, but like, yeah. So
Well,
whatever you do, whatever
who takes
dominions or
priority though?
principalities-
Like who gets to conjure up? Like if someone's divine and they have their own celestial realm and it's a man, is it the woman has to be a part of the celestial man's realm and she has no say in like what the buildings look like and stuff? Or
I would think it'll be in a similar model as how we see the man and a woman run the household here. So you're supposed to be equal partners. That's
so they're not really divine because they're not actually equal in the house partners. You guys don't have a hierarchical system in your households? Gay.
So oh wait, is that the Orthodox thing?
Well, I mean, does the man lead the family or not? Are they
yeah,
Are
so
you have
in
partners?
the Lord's so in the Lord's definition of the man being the leader, how it's been revealed to us is what that means is it doesn't mean in the worldly kind of sense of like you're the king, like you're the boss. That's not what we established it to be. But yes, you are the leader, like the head of the house. But again, the Lord's definitions often differ a little bit than how the world would. Like, for example, like if you're the president or presiding authority of a company, that usually means like you're the executive, like you're the. But again, the ways of God work a little bit different. But you're not wrong that we do claim the man should be the head of the house and lead in righteousness. Yes, so. And we can, of course, dive in if we want to, is what that means. But
all right. So nobody says for 10, Sermon in the Grove explicitly teaches God the Father had a father and so on. God the Father of Jesus Christ had a father. You may suppose he had a father also.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, yeah.
And then this question kind of leads on to it.
Jabroni
says, assuming God is the creator, when he was not God, did he create himself, or is that just incoherent nonsense?
Again, the universe and our existence as far as we are concerned, he was the creator. He created the heavens and the earth. That's what the Bible says, what the Book of Mormon says. So, again, if we're getting into the lineage and mysteries of God, I can't give you that answer. I'm not going to make an explanation that God chose not to explain himself on yet.
Okay. And Brandon the Inquirer for 50 said, unfortunately, I'm not able to watch this tonight, but I'll be listening to this in the morning at work. God bless you, JimBob.
Thank you for that, Brandon. Very generous.
Faria1 gifted 5 Rattlesnake TV memberships. Thank you very much, Faria. Rachel Wilson said, total JimBob domination. If Patrick still holds these completely incoherent, contradictory beliefs, he is delusional. Nice work, JimBob. And Rachel gifted 5
I feel famous now.
5 made by JimBob memberships as well.
Thank you, Rachel.
Jihad Pork Farmer is back, saying, Patrick, do we all essentially believe in the same God as the Pope claims?
I would argue our understanding of who that God is differs, but essentially, at least generally speaking, yeah, we're worshiping the same God, sure. Yeah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, God of the Bible, yes.
All right, well, guys, last chance to get your super chats into myself or JimBob channel. I can see them both here if you guys had a question to ask. Oh, no, it's Aaron, gifted 5 memberships. Thank you very much, Aaron. I really appreciate that. Chris Scott, good to meet you as well at DebateCon, says Joey Smitty could have an eidetic memory. Eidetic memory. What does that mean, guys? Anybody smarter than me knows what eidetic memory means?
I've never seen that word before, Christopher, but let me look it up. So, because I don't want a wasted question, right? So let's just look it up quick.
Combined with a fantastical imagination, i.e. Egyptian burial texts, and trying to pass them off as scripture.
Photographic memory. Christopher's being very fancy, by the way, Christopher.
Yeah, I know. Speak English, Christopher, please.
Yeah. So Joseph Smithy, he could have had an eidetic memory combined with a fantastical imagination, Egyptian burial text. That's another thing I didn't hear from you. I've had other Mormons and LDS agree that the whole burial text thing was a little bit sketchy. What's your view on that?
As far as the golden plates, is that where we're...
Well, he found at like a farmer's market some Egyptian burial texts. He didn't understand them, so he started transcribing them, and all of his transcriptions were inconsistent with a future translation of the burial text, which just happened to be Egyptian burial text, and inconsistent with what he wrote. He also drew added pictures. He drew like an eagle head. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, the later identical manuscripts that was copied showed that wasn't actually the picture. So he drew the wrong pictures onto the facsimiles. So What say you?
No, the every argument I found on those
Facsimile?
Those are real. The arguments from the critics is that his interpretation of them were completely off or whatever. That's what they argue. But he didn't make up those pictures, and he bought those papyrus scrolls from, I don't remember his name, but it was someone who was kind of doing a tour that he had come from Egypt, and they had uncovered a bunch of Egyptian, like, this is historical fact, like he uncovered a bunch of Egyptian artifacts, and then eventually he did a tour and made it to Nauvoo, and that's when Joseph was like interested in it and he bought them. But also only a portion of the original ones are still like in existence, because there was a fire, so they're in a museum now, and you can look at them. But the argument is that critics say that his translation of them was completely off. That's their argument. But again, here's the thing, and people probably won't like this, and that's fine. When I look at historical matters, there's some that are historical through and through, like 100%. Like, did he actually buy them? Did they exist? Whatever. Those are questions of history. There are some historical matters that also deal with the things of the spirit. Okay, and we both are religious, so I feel like this is not too crazy to say that matters that deal with the spirit. So when you're approaching those kind of historical claims and historical topics, if you're approaching it more as a critic, then that's of course going to influence your assumptions when you're filling in the gaps. If you're approaching it more as like a believer or someone who wants to believe, that's of course going to influence your assumptions. So
was Joseph?
It's an interesting topic, and I've learned a lot from the actual book of Abraham that we have in our canonized scripture, and it's pretty.
Was Joseph
pretty
Smith
incredible.
approaching the Bible from a critical position?
Overarchingly, a spiritual revelatory approach.
Okay, so Joseph Smith definitely had access to the Bible before his revelation, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm asking is, like, you're saying, well, once we look at this, I mean, we have to institute some sort of mystery, supernatural mystery, revelatory mystery. So it might be totally fine if Joseph Smith was inaccurate in his translations of the Egyptian burial text, inserted a bunch of things that were later found to be mistranslated entirely, which is ironic given that his entire theology is based on the assumption that the true text of the Christian doctrine and its revelatory system and its holy scriptures are mistranslated. I thought it was kind of a funny wink from the true God to demonstrate that Joseph Smith himself, in the crafting of his false religion, mistranslated a document.
Yeah, but again, it's not my claim that he mistranslated the Lord's word through that document. And here's something I can just, and this may not be a clear connection to everybody, that's fine. And we see it in the Bible too, right? That often information will often precede revelation, right? So we have that example in like Exodus, right? I have it right here. Sorry, hold up. Here we go. Exodus 18, right? Exodus 18, where Moses, the prophet, again, given the oracle of God. It turned out when Jethro talked to him and he told him how he did his system of like, okay, when anyone has an issue, they come to me, every single one of them. And then Jethro corrected him. He's like, no, what you're doing is not good. Like, you're going to tire yourself out. Blah, blah. But anyway, the reason I bring that up, and then he gives them the actual system that they should use. The reason I bring that up is because this is an example of sometimes information and study, and I don't doubt that Joseph maybe implemented some of his studies of for example, the Bible translation that he did and his knowledge of that. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that the Lord could use his knowledge of certain things. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it simply precedes revelation, right? So that's just how God works sometimes. Sometimes it's like a flash of light. He gives you the answer. Sometimes he doesn't.
Do you believe that the Bible can be, as it is today, like a Book of Mormon itself, included with the biblical text original? Do you believe that can be mistranslated or misinterpreted?
It could be misinterpreted, like if I was trying to interpret it. Or something.
And what's the ultimate authority for interpretation when someone reads the Book of Mormon?
The ultimate authority would be the canon revealed through his ordained servants, the prophets and apostles. So that's the ultimate authority of.
Is that a who or?
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
so
God's
you have an
authority, but revealed through the prophet. Yes.
Okay, so there's a current prophet right now who can properly interpret all of the Book of Mormon.
Essentially, yes.
Okay, so it's one person.
Exactly what you're asking, yeah.
So it's one person. It's like a you have a papacy essentially for hermeneutics.
I guess you can compare it to the Pope in a way. I'm not an expert on Catholicism, but yeah, he's basically acts as the oracle of God, just like in Amos 3:7, where he says, "Surely the Lord God will do nothing save He reveal His secrets unto His servants, the prophets." Right. So if there's
then if biblical knowledge and truth about Christ's true church requires a prophet of the time, isn't it fair to ask for a succession of teaching and prophecy?
Sure, that's fair to ask, but the whole event of apostasy required and called for a restoration. So we do, and here's the thing. No, I'm doing it. This is off of faith, of course. So I can't show you, but
faith in Joseph Smith, right?
In our doctrine, we do have I mean, of course, it comes down to what Joseph Smith said because he was the prophet.
But not what anyone else said, right?
What do you mean, of his time, like alive during his time?
In other words, there's no one before Joseph Smith that you can appeal to say, I have faith in that person too. What I'm pointing to is Mormonism has zero succession from their acclaimed, alleged true church to Joseph Smith. And you just have to trust Joseph Smith. And so you say, yeah, ultimately I'm going to appeal to Joseph Smith. I'll ask you a question. When did Mormonism start?
1830s, when the church was organized.
You just conceded the debate. The true church of Mormonism would necessarily have to exist at the time of Christ.
Okay, sure. You got me on a pedantic.
I sure did. It's not pedantic, dude. It's not pedantic. It's serious,
bro. We didn't call it the Mormon. We didn't call it. It was called the Church of Christ. There's no Mormon church.
So the true.
So if you want to talk about language.
Okay, so the true Church of Christ started when?
If we're talking in the fullest sense, that was really Adam and Eve was the first church. Adam. That's when it started.
Okay, and then when Christ came and established his church, New Testament church, when did that start? It was when Christ established it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, because if someone asks,
cyclical series of apostasy.
So the thing is, it's totally normal for someone who's a skeptic to go, well, Joseph Smith has claims. Now, his claims should match some history, not just claims. The problem with Mormonism, among many I've exposed tonight, is that you guys don't have any apostolic succession from Christ, his commission, and then the death of the apostles, except for John. You have nothing in between that you can point to that actually carries forth. You just have an empty void, and all it is an appeal to Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith is the only source for your theology, ultimately.
Sure, yeah, and I can understand from someone outside looking in how that, I can totally get how, just like any religion can seem a little silly in a lot of claims. That's fine. Again, coming from a Christian, I don't see that as a gotcha or anything. Like, I can see if I tell someone, well,
really?
it came through Joseph Smith, the reaction would be like, what the heck are you talking about? That's totally fine, but I don't. That's not why I know it. I know it because the Lord.
Do you don't understand how fatal this view is? You just admitted
I get it.
that.
That's why it all.
Hold on.
Do you know why his prophetic call all lies in the book of Mormon?
Let me show. No, stop preaching for a second. I just got you to say that the only really ultimate source of your entire religion is Joseph Smith. If your religion was true and you called it Christian, which is a different debate, the other source for your religion would in fact be Christ himself and his apostles. The fact that you just said Joseph Smith is ultimately the only source of your religion makes the religion itself a creature of Joseph Smith.
Yes, the restored church, you can view it that way, yes. And I can clarify, and you're right to point that out, that yes, the claim here through Joseph Smith, and I got to make this clear, and maybe you already know this, is the things that were seen as unique in his day that he's talking about, that he's preaching, and even unique today that are a little different or people see as weird. We never claimed that they were actually new. They were new of the day, maybe, but rather old, ancient truths restored. So when you're talking about
evidence of that
bottleneck through the bottleneck through the restoration, yes, all of that lies on whether Joseph Smith was a prophet.
You can't even tell me what's being restored. That's what's so bad about Mormonism. When I go, oh, he claims it's being restored. By the way, 300 years before or so was Luther. He literally copied Luther, and he claimed first that he restored it.
He reformed it. He didn't
restore, whatever it is.
It's different. It's a distinct.
Yeah, but the claim is that there's something to restore. The problem with the claim is that when you ask what's being restored, you can't point to anything historically That's a big problem because restoration. Look. Hold on a second. You ever see like an antique show where there's like those cool guys who do restoration projects on antiques? Now, isn't it necessary to say I'm going to restore this, that you actually have a referent in order to restore?
Yeah, the New Testament church. Yeah.
Mormonism doesn't have anything that's a referent in history that they can point to that they're restoring.
Jesus' New Testament church, but also I can point to the doctrine that we teach.
Where is that?
Eternal families, for example. So you can find traces like in old Jewish writings.
You don't understand.
Of a belief in eternal union.
Just
so
saying,
just
claiming Christ's church when Christ was here and he established his college, right, to teach and spread his church, spread the gospel, right? You don't have access to that alone. You have to appeal to someone other than Joseph Smith. You have to appeal to a historical account. Do you understand? So when I say you don't actually have a reference to point to that's the Mormon true church in the year 100 or anything or before, right? You don't have anything. You just say Christ's true church. The problem with that claim is that's the thing in question. You don't have access historically to Christ's true church because it was preserved and kept by the Church of Satan. You don't even know which is true or not about Christ's true church.
Yeah, which was why we needed the restoration. That's exactly
that's
why.
Circular, bro. Do you accept that God gave you logic? Patrick, do you accept that God gave you logic?
Yes.
Okay. How do you know Joseph Smith had to restore the true church?
Because how do I know it? Is because it was revealed to me. That's how I know it. Now, if we have the supporting evidence of the Book of Mormon again, and its production that we can go over, but that's how I know.
So you're saying the church needed to be restored because Joseph Smith restored it, right?
Yeah, because the Lord revealed it through
him.
the prophet.
Premise 1, the church needed to be restored. Premise 2, Joseph Smith restored it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's putting. Okay, that's logical to you.
All right, let's get on to the next one, fellas. Because I like you more than Mormons, JimBob Fire, says Marilyn. Papaya Terry says, if God was once a man like his father, who was once a man like his father? How long is God? Just curious. That one's for you, Patrick.
I think it's just like the other questions. Like it's one of the mysteries that we don't know. I don't know. So I have no clue. I have no answer for you.
Stand Up Paddle with a very animal rescue with a very generous 50. Thank you very much, sir. Says, if perfect divinity exists in me as one of the God's children, allows me to hear the Lord, and what the Lord tells me contrasts what he tells you, Patrick, which is right. How can two separate instances both represent perfect divinity if one has to be wrong?
I didn't say both were correct, but you do. Again, I think I answered this one already, that the only thing I can go off of is my witness. That's all I can go off of. So if you come to me and say I received a different answer, again, God works on that personal level. I don't know why you would feel you got that answer or why, whatever. So I don't know. I can only go off my personal witness because that's how personal revelation works. Like I didn't make those. Like I didn't make those rules. So.
Patrick, do you think that something that's not God could give you a false revelation of something?
Yeah.
Okay. So you did something in your closer that I actually didn't appreciate. You presented it and framed it as if I didn't have a counter answer. You said, give me any other alternative explanation for Joseph Smith being able to write that much in 65 days. And I gave one. Now, you have no reason to reject that it's a possibility, right? So if it's possible logically that someone could write that quickly and write all that stuff, given that's the true story of it, right? It's totally fine to say, well, yeah, we can be influenced by godliness and we could be influenced by demonic entities. Do you believe that?
We can, absolutely. And the reason I brought up the whole fruits thing is that there's a couple ways to look at it, but when they accused Jesus of casting out devils by the power of the devil, he explained how that doesn't work. And he explained the logic. So the connection I made was that's akin to saying the Book of Mormon that does nothing but preach of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's this, to me anyway, in my view, it's basically the same logic. So I would just encourage you or anybody, open up to any part of the Book of Mormon. Okay. Open up to any part of the Book of Mormon, any page. And then as you read through it, just ask yourself very genuinely, would the devil have inspired this?
So you're the source. So you're the source.
No, that's my suggestion. I'm not the prophet.
Wait. Who are you
That's
at? You just said ask yourself. That means you're the assumed authority, right?
No, right now I'm appealing to logic. Yes, right now I'm appealing to your common
logic.
sense.
So let's look at logic.
Or really your spiritual senses. Is what
if you believe God revealed something to Joseph Smith, and then you were in personal revelation, as you put it, where you revealed that what he said and everything is true about Mormonism, do you think God would reveal something that you're incapable of defending logically?
Actually, yeah. Paul had to do it. His conversion and his vision, according to, again, the scriptural experts of the day, said it was all heresy and of the devil. But here's the thing: that didn't change the fact that he saw in a vision Christ and heard a voice. It doesn't change it. So it might not fit our human. It might not fit our human logic.
Okay.
Sure.
So you're saying that it's possible. You're more likely to believe that the truth from God was revealed to someone if, on all accounts, metaphysics, epistemology, historicity, ecclesiology, metaphysics, all the rest, if it's incapable of defending through the tools God gave us, which is logic, which he gave us to know him personally, you're saying it's totally consistent to be delivered a doctrine you can't defend? I just want to get that clear.
In the same sense that Paul couldn't, with their scriptural reason and their interpretation, couldn't defend his vision because it went against everything that he as a student of the scriptures, as an expert of the scriptures, went against everything he believed, but it didn't change the fact that it was real. Unless, of course, you believe Paul was visited by the devil or something. Which
what part of Paul's claims were logically incoherent or inconsistent?
No, I don't think they were. I'm saying that's what the experts of the day argue.
Are you not listening?
Just like how you're arguing,
dude.
Yeah.
No.
I didn't say they were. I didn't say they were. I said according to the scripture.
Unbelievable, man.
According to the experts. That's what
I demonstrated contradictions in your view. That's logically inconsistent, okay? You're saying, well, Paul also had logically inconsistent views. Well, no, he didn't, right? He didn't. They weren't demonstrated to be illogical at all.
No, well, then you didn't listen to what I said. I said, according to the scriptural experts of the day and the ones arguing, kind of like how you're arguing against my personal witness, according to them and their interpretation of scripture, it was incoherent with their interpretation.
I see. So my cross-examination didn't actually produce that your views are inconsistent. It was just me misunderstanding them, right?
Well, yeah, I think we've demonstrated that because every time I showed how you didn't actually understand it, you pivoted to another one. So yeah, I would say you're accurate in that assessment.
Okay, but God also, there was a time God didn't exist, right?
Yeah, in a topic that I admitted that are mysterious, that we don't know because it hasn't been revealed. And again, as a Christian, I don't see why that's a problem to say.
You don't think it's a problem to say that? No. Stop saying mystery.
Dude, there are mysteries. They're mysteries. Dude, they haven't been revealed.
No,
I don't know what else to call them.
No. Hold on. You're saying that under your Mormon view, it's actually logically possible that there was a time where God didn't exist. That's what you said.
From what we've been revealed, correct? Yeah. He keeps using logic. Here's the thing: if we don't, again, if we don't have the full picture of that doctrine because it's being revealed line upon line, precept upon precept, as Isaiah put it, then yes, to our understanding, it's going to seem illogical. A lot of the times.
No, hold on a second. Let's look at this for a second. If you hold the view that it's logically possible for God, there's a time where he didn't exist, then God needed to be created, right?
Sure. Again, I don't know, but sure. Yeah.
So that's logically.
Can I logically explain to you how that happened? No, I can't because it's a mystery.
Is that
this is not that hard?
Patrick, is that logically consistent and coherent to you that there was a time where God didn't exist, but he was created?
No, because it doesn't have to be because it hasn't been revealed. So
according
to my limited understanding, sure, it seems illogical. I can't logically explain it because it hasn't been revealed.
Could go on all day with this, but we're going to read our 10s and yellows and up from now on, guys. Yellows and up from now on because we've got a few to get through.
Okay.
Farrier 1 says for 10, question for both sides is if you had to pick a single proposition from the side of the opposition, what would you see as your opponent's strongest point that their position could argue for successfully?
Did you want to go first or you want me to? I got to think about that for a second.
Well, my point is strictly oppositional, so I don't have the positive position necessarily. So question is for me. The question is for me. Single proposition. The single proposition that I would grant Mormons is that the initial scriptures, the Holy Scriptures that Joseph Smith got a hold of, like every other Reformation, Restoration theologian, heretic, the proposition is that Christ established a church. The most I could grant to a Mormon is the proposition that Christ established his true church and told the apostles to go out and spread the church and teach it. That's the only proposition I could grant a Mormon, and it's not even a Mormon position. It needs a history. It's not Joseph Smith's position. It's a position that Joseph Smith read into and goes, yeah, I'll take that. But he has no reason to. There's no reason to accept that Christ established a true church under Mormonism.
Patrick, anything you'd grant for the Orthodox Christian side?
Well, I'll just base it off Jim's arguments because I'm not an expert on Christian orthodoxy, but I'm fine conceding that the whole metaphysics argument is not our strong point. But again, I mentioned why that's not a huge problem, because we do believe that all that has been revealed and all that will be revealed until the second coming of Christ, and we know all things. So that's okay if you stump me on metaphysics and who was God before God. But I explain why that, to me, it's not a problem, because I know I have my anchor truths that I know for a fact are true, and that what that tells me is there's an answer to this. I just don't know the answer, and that's totally fine. I'm totally fine admitting that. But sure, I guess the metaphysics thing, I usually don't get in discussions about that because I'm not as interested, honestly, in that topic.
Okay, where are we at?
How long have we been going? We've been going a while. Huh? Oh,
yeah.
It's been fun. It went fast.
Just Gerald says for 20, it was great to meet you as well for JimBob. And thank you for helping me better understand Orthodox foundations. You get 20 because Jake butchered my South Park reference.
He did. The dumb thing.
Oh, really? I haven't seen the Book of Mormon, if that's what it's about. Or is it a South Park thing?
It's a great Broadway play.
All right. Toxic White Male says for 10, Patrick, quit muttering arguments when JimBob is talking. No one knows what you're saying, and it just makes you look different with cope. By the way, you worship a different God than the Christian God.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for
Clicker says for 10, how does Mormonism support the practice of lay people having the Melchizedek priesthood and being able to carry around oil to bless people?
How does it support the practice? Is he asking maybe to just explain our
Does that happen? That lay people go around blessing people. Is that a practice in Mormon LDS?
Oh, yeah, because you can have the Melchizedek priesthood, and one ordinance that kind of grants you in authority is to give blessings of both comfort and blessings of healing, in which you use oil, like consecrated oil. Yeah.
And where did that tradition? How did you know about that tradition?
Partly from probably the Jewish practices, again, which were ancient truths restored. So yeah, wasn't
restored.
Yeah.
All right, and Chris Dione says, thanks everyone. It's interesting to get a view into theology. Yes, it is indeed. Imperial Cantina says, did Jesus have a office-based evaluation with the apostles? So after, and then quote, so after you all died, all your bishops betrayed you and you perverted the church. What is that? What is it that you say you actually did according to LDS?
So after you all die, all your bishops betrayed you. When you say you all, no, again, and if I can clarify, because again, it was a lot of back and forth that I couldn't really get it out, but I'll just go ahead and Elder Oaks, referring to the first vision is what we call, where God also said that none of the churches were true, like they weren't my church, and all their creeds were an abomination in my sight. And he simply says, we affirm that this divine declaration was a condemnation of the creeds, not of the faithful seekers who believed in them. So I have no problem believing that God could inspire, again, not in the same sense as a prophet restoring the truths, but can inspire people, even within, yes, the whore of all the earth. He can inspire his children to carry on the scripture, compile it, all that stuff. That's totally okay. That's totally fine. Just in the same sense that God used the wicked men who brought Jesus to be condemned to die, because we're talking about God here, of course he can do this, use that for the salvation of all mankind. So that's totally fine. Like, it totally fits within our claims.
All right, and last one here I'll read. We've got, Patrick, you have better shoulders than JimBob, but more importantly, would you ever come to an Orthodox Divine Liturgy if we invited you to?
Sure, yeah. I'm over here in Idaho now, near Mormon land, so I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not that heavy.
There's Orthodoxy in Idaho. There's definitely Orthodoxy.
Okay. I don't know if it's a specific one he was talking about or whatever, but yeah, okay. Sure, yeah, I'd be happy. I visited a Muslim mosque. I visited other faiths and stuff, so that's no problem. I'd be happy to do it. I've never been to an Orthodox service, so.
All right, well, let's sign off by just letting everybody know where they can find you, starting off with you, Patrick.
Sure. Again, I'm not really a content creator, so I don't really have a following necessarily, but I guess X would be the best place you can find me at Petrickstar, so Petrickstar. And I don't know, maybe I'll get some more followers. Who knows? Maybe 2. But yeah, that's about it. So.
Cool. And JimBob?
I just want to address one super chat I saw come in that was important. He said, "Why is it important from the Orthodox view to why is apostolic succession important?" And I'll just summarize it real quick, Jake. Is that if Christ established a true church and it was Episcopal, meaning there's an overseer of the church, and Eucharistic in its participation, then it would follow that if that church as a promise would never be rattled by Satan, that it would be alive and well no matter what, which is Christ's promise, then it would be necessarily carried forth into reality, manifest as a place, a participation through matter. We participate in the sacraments. And so apostolic succession is really important because if it's true that God established a college to teach, and then there were 70, and then there were bishops, and then under bishops there were priests, and from the laying of hands and the teaching that the Holy Tradition carried forth, if that were true, then what we see today as the claimed Christ true church would reflect the church of, let's say, the early 100s, 200s, 300s, 400s, 500s, right? Now, Orthodoxy does reflect that. It does reflect that. So the question always becomes, if you think you're a part of the true church and you agree the true church started with Christ, can you point to any tradition or any practice or any theology that you can track back all the way back to Christ? Orthodoxy can do that. No other view can do that. The closest that comes in second is the Catholic Church, but in the 1000s, they started branching away and innovating. So it's a filtering system. Mormonism, no offense, Patrick, is the furthest. I wouldn't even call it heterodox Christianity. I wouldn't even call it that. So that's why it's important. It's a really good question, Alchemist. And you learn about that if you start attending Orthodoxy and let's say you become a catechumen or you want to take the classes. The first thing and always the missing thing that we've always failed to view in the West is church history, and it's so important. Come and see.
Well, thank you very much for jumping on, guys. Patrick, it was good to meet you. Thank you for coming and doing the debate. JimBob, thank you very much. And with that, signing out. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, Patrick. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.